Planning Board to order. Eileen, opening statement, please.
Planning Board meeting, June 6, 2019. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Planning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 4th, 2019, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Star-Ledger and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 4th, 2019, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 4th, 2019, said notice was posted in the office of the Planning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits, which are on your right at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Boyle's been excused. Mr. Dorado?
Here.
Mr. Husser?
Here.
Chief Kudrick has been excused. Mr. Nicastro?
Here.
Mr. Schneider?
Here.
Mr. Tannenhouse has been excused. Mr. Seaman?
Here.
Mr. Everett?
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Here.
And Chairman Nash.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and then remain standing for a moment of silence for our troops both over here and abroad, and also our first responders. Paul, do the honor. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Eileen, any correspondence?
I have no correspondence, only what was emailed to the members.
Okay, then we're going to move right now to memorialization of resolutions. There's an issue with the resolution for the Cornerstone Cavalry Chapel.
There were some comments, so
Comments,
I'm just going to
okay.
address the comments.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to carry that one to the next time. So the first one is resolution memorializing proposed ordinance O-19-28. Do I have a motion to memorialize this resolution?
I make a motion to memorialize ordinance number 0-1928.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Nicastro?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes,
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Chairman Nash.
Yes.
Resolution's memorialized.
Thank you. The next one is memorialization of the resolution for ordinance O-19-29, and I forgot to add Mr. Hooser, Mr. Nicastro, Mr. Schneider, Mr. Seaman, Deputy Mayor O'Donnell, and myself are the eligible voters. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to memorialize resolution for proposed ordinance 0-1928.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Nicastro?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes,
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Chairman Nash.
Yes.
Resolution's memorialized.
Thank you. All right, the last one is going to be resolution memorializing proposed ordinance O-19-30. Eligible voters, Mr. Hooser, Mr. Nicastro, Mr. Schneider, Mr. Seaman, Deputy Mayor O'Donnell, and myself. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Chairman Nash?
Yes.
Resolution's memorialized.
All right, we're going to move right into the agenda now. We have 4 applications on the agenda, and I have intention of reaching and starting or continuing, as it may be, each one of those. So we are going to limit each application to approximately 1 hour in duration. So with that being said, the first case that we're going to hear tonight is case number SP 1052, Monmouth Commerce Center. This is for preliminary and final major site plan with ancillary bulk variance. It's the application of Monmouth Commerce Center LLC as applicant and Lawrence Katz and Felix Pfizer as owners seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval with ancillary bulk variance and design waivers and exceptions to construct 9 warehouse buildings ranging in size from 85,600 square feet to 150,000 square feet and equaling approximately 1,242,102 square feet in total. 5 full movement access drives along Randolph Road, parking for 706 vehicles and 142 trailer parking spaces, 234 loading spaces, and 5 monument-style site identification signs on premises known as Block 5, Lots 2 and 3 at the intersection of Randolph Road and Oak Glen Road. This application was originally scheduled to be heard on April 4th, when it was rescheduled to May 9th, 2019, after some testimony was placed on the record on May 19th. This application was carried to June 6, 2019, which is tonight, with no further notice. Counselor?
Good evening. My name is Meryl Goncher. I'm a member of the firm of Sills, Cummins, and Gross, and as you indicated, the applicant this evening is Monmouth Commerce Center, LLC. We are their attorneys. This is a continuation from May 9, and at that time, we had presented our civil engineer. We propose this evening to continue with his testimony, address some questions, complete some of those items, and then we are prepared to move on to a representative from a related entity to the applicant to discuss operations, which was another subject as to which there was questioning from the board. So that's our proposal.
Counsel?
Excuse me, I'll sit.
Counsel, just before you get started, just any other counsel who are here representing clients, if you want to enter your appearances.
Good evening, Board. Craig Bossong, B as in boy, Ossong, from the law firm Florio, Perucci, Steinhardt, and Capelli. I represent a bunch of homeowners who form the group Howell for Open Land Preservation of the Environment, HOPE. I've provided a list of all the current clients that we represent to your board attorney, to the chairman, and also to the applicant's attorney. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, just counsel, just before you leave, so we're going to mark this as 01, being the cover letter and the list of clients. I did a rough count. There's approximately 43 clients. Counsel, to your knowledge, are there any of your clients who would have a conflict with any of the board members in terms of personal relationships or anything else?
Not that I know of, but I will double check on all that, and if additional clients get added to that list, I'll provide consistent updates.
Okay. All right, thank you. And also, do you have any objection to the board's jurisdiction to hold this hearing tonight?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Since I know we are going to have a brief period of time, I just do want to place on the record that we would like to request a special hearing, since we are going to be going through our second appearance before you, and we will probably have about an hour. We have a number of additional witnesses to present. Obviously, we have an objector here, which will also add to the time that it will take to move through the application. So we would like to raise that with the board. We'll go through our testimony, but just so you know, if we can stop a few minutes before so we can discuss it.
So to that extent, yes, we were going to do a presentation of our master plan. Our planner was going to present that at the June 20th meeting. I'm understanding for reasons that I can't get into, that will not go on, which frees up a spot on that agenda for your application. And it was my intent to, since you're not going to finish tonight, to carry it as a continuation to that meeting.
20?
And
All right,
you know,
we'll-
just think about that. as we
Thank
go.
you. And I'm asking, you can't see me, but I'm asking my consultants to check their calendars as we sit here. So
That's fine.
thank you for that courtesy. And I think we'd already provided an extension of the time for the board to act through the end of the month, as I recall. So
When we carry it,
cover
we'll
it.
discuss
Okay,
it.
thank you. As I indicated, when we were here previously, my civil engineer, who's with me, had gone through a significant amount of his testimony. There were questions that came up, some from the consultant review letter, some that resulted from questions from the board. I don't know if you need to swear him again, ask him if he's
He
still...
remains under oath.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we want to start with the tape, with the video, or do you want to...
You want to start right off with that?
Or do you want to go through the other stuff?
You added it again.
Okay, all right. I'm going to ask, we have an exhibit to hand out, which deals with, there are two actually. We had been requested to provide responses to the township engineer's memo. We have that written response. And we also had been asked to do a calculation with regard to garbage and recycling volumes, and we have an exhibit which explains that as well, which we will ask to have marked and then distribute.
So we're up to A17.
If we can mark the response to the township engineer, would be A17, and the,
And just what's the date of that, today?
I don't even know if it's but we'll say it's today's, it was
So just
prepared today.
amended.
This is a response to the township engineer's comments of April 11, 2019, and we'll provide those to the board and to counsel for the objector. The next item is a letter on dynamic engineering letterhead. Today's dated June 2019, and it's referenced refuse recycling statement for the Monmouth Commerce Center project. And we will distribute that as well, if we can mark that A18.
Thank you.
You have your copies. Okay.
Counselor, is it your intent to distribute these and go through them in testimony to officially put them on the record?
Well, we would ask that we'll move all of this. We weren't going to go item through item. We thought the document spoke for itself. Obviously, if your engineer has any further questions or clarifications once he reviews it, in large measure, we have agreed to, with limited exception, I should say, we have agreed to make the changes that were requested. There are a few items where we have comments or explanations. There may be some further communication with the engineer. But I think if we could start with just putting in, moving these and then starting with the refuse calculation. You'll recall this came up at the last meeting where there was a question about, I guess, the adequacy of the dumpsters or compactors that are being provided. And so we went back to your ordinance and did a calculation to provide that information. So with that, Steve?
So the statement that you have in front of you, what we've done is we've taken general engineering practices for the generation of refuse and recycling materials.
I'm sorry, just before you go, this letter is unsigned, all right? You want to put on the record that this was prepared under your supervision?
Yes, this document was prepared under my direct supervision. Thank you. So what we've done is we've identified on a per-employee basis the anticipated generation of recyclable waste and general refuse waste. And the calculation represents approximately 0.15 tons per year per employee of anticipated recyclable waste, which correlates to approximately 2 cubic yards per year per employee. Then for general refuse, we've identified approximately 2.25 tons per employee per year, which correlates to approximately 4.5 cubic yards. Based on the number of units within the buildings, we anticipate a minimum unit size of approximately 20,000 square feet. The applicant does not anticipate an individual unit within the buildings going smaller than that size. At approximately 10 employees per unit, correlating to the largest building on site of 150,000 square feet is approximately 75 employees per building. Taking the calculated recyclable generation of approximately 2 cubic yards per employee represents approximately 150 cubic yards per building on an annual basis. Breaking that out over the course of 52 weeks is approximately 2.88 or approximately 3 cubic yards per week per building. The applicant is proposing the 3 enclosures per building with 2 cubic yard recycling dumpsters in each enclosure. So we're providing approximately 6 cubic yards of storage a week, presuming a weekly pickup of those recyclable materials. So we believe from that perspective we are providing adequate recycling measures. Also in your ordinance, there is a provision, I believe, Laura can confirm this, that requests that if there is a 4-week stacking of those materials, how much volume would that generate? And again, just doing the math, that would generate approximately 12 cubic yards of material. So we could enlarge the dumpsters to 4 cubic yard dumpsters. They would fit easily in our proposed 10 by 10 enclosures. So the 3 enclosures at 4-yard dumpsters would provide for 12 cubic yards. So we believe additionally we would be meeting that 4-week, let's say there were issues, strikes, whatever may occur, we would be able to provide for a 4-week storage of recyclable materials. We did
So
not.
you're officially amending the application to provide 4 cubic yard dumpsters?
Yes. Regarding
Well,
the
just
general.
on
Yep.
that, just on vocabulary, I would say revising, not amending the application.
The plans will be revised to reflect
To
4
reflect
cubic
the-
yard
Yeah.
dumpsters. And then regarding the general refuse, we are proposing 2 compactors for each building. The compactors are really operated on an as-needed basis. The compactors are capable of handling large volumes of waste well in excess of what would be anticipated for this use. And as operations get underway, the refuse hauler and the company managing the compactors, they'll work a schedule out and they'll identify, based on the tenant's use, what the most appropriate pickup timing is for that facility. So it's really, will be operated on an as-needed basis once the operations are up and going.
So Steve, based upon that, and with the revision to the plan that you've referenced, is it your testimony that what we've provided in terms of refuse, or what we're proposing to provide, I should say, with regard to refuse and recycling will be adequate to accommodate what's proposed and will be consistent with the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. If I may make one clarification, your statement, you used 20,000 as what we believe to be a likely minimum size in the smaller building, but your previous testimony, I think we've already testified that the ordinance allows a space of not less than 5,000. So we're not making a representation, but merely what you used for your calculation?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, unless there's questions about that, we would move on to, still with Mr. Catani's testimony, but with a different topic.
That's fine.
Okay. What do you want to do, the snow?
Yeah, did we hand the snow?
Okay. One of the other things that there were questions regarding where snow would be placed, and we were requested to provide some kind of plan to show when the project was developed where snow would be stored after it was removed from the parking lot, the drive aisles, and any walkways. We have an exhibit to provide to you as well.
All right, so we'll mark this as A19,
Yes.
and we'll call it a snow removal exhibit. Is that what we should call it?
I guess.
Snow storage.
Snow storage? Okay.
Gonna get it right there tonight.
Is that the plan?
Well, it's got color. So
Okay, so that we don't have that, okay.
I can use it.
Okay. All right. Do you have a copy?
I know it's on. That's
Oh.
all right. I know.
Okay. All right, referencing what we've now marked as A19, the snow storage plan, if you could discuss with the board how you've addressed that and whether it's your testimony that the areas that we've identified for storage are adequate to accommodate what we anticipate post-development.
Well, again, understanding that it's impossible to predict what type of snow events we're going to get, but the anticipation is the areas identified in blue on the plan represent areas that during the winter months would be the most probable to set aside for the piling of excess snow within the property during plowing operations and during times where storm events may happen in enough frequency that the storage of snow would be required. So we've identified those areas we believe would be adequate to move and provide storage for that excess snow during the winter months. Additionally, and our traffic expert will go into this regarding our parking calculations, we've included in this application the parking requirement for additional office space, even though we believe the office space there is a provision in the parking calculation for warehousing that assumes a certain percentage of office. Within that, we went above and beyond that and added additional office space on top of that. So we believe there is going to be some additional area available within the vehicle parking spaces for additional snow storage based on the fact that we believe all the parking spaces most likely will not be utilized at all times.
Okay. And so would it be your testimony then that if these areas were designated for use and used, it would not impact the safe and efficient operation of the site in terms of parking and circulation?
Yes.
Okay. We would also, as well as marking this as an exhibit, to the extent that any notations or further revisions to the plan are required, we will do so so that either this sheet or a marked sheet will become part of any plan set that's submitted.
Mr. Catani, having the solution and working backwards, assuming a reasonable height of the pile, I'm assuming you're going to use a front-end loader or something like that to move the snow. Say that the pile goes to 8 feet in height, something like that. Could you tell me what this volume equates to in the number of inches of snow?
We didn't calculate that out. We could provide that for you as a calculation if you're looking for, it's difficult with snow as far as what type of snow fell. Was it a wet snow? Was it a dry snow? There are so many factors that go into the type of snow event to predict that volume, how much that volume is going to compact upon storage and piling. It's a very subjective. We can give you some assumed parameters and give you a number. Again, it would be based on all those parameters occurring in a particular event.
That's fine, so at least we have some indication. I understand there's wide variability, but I would just like to know a general number. Whether
Absolutely.
it's 1 inch, 2 inches, or a foot, something that'll give us some indication.
Certainly.
Second thing I'd like to ask you is, in these areas, I assume the snow is going to go in these shaded areas? All right?
Yes.
I'm looking at, one of them is in the drive aisle as you come in. Another is in the trailer parking area. With the snow piled there, do you still have the required distance from the edge of the dock to allow a large wheelbase vehicle to maneuver?
Yes, we do.
What's that dimension from the dock to the
So
far side?
from the building loading dock face to the far side of the loading aisle is 130 feet, which is the industry standard for a loading area.
And you have that, I'm looking at the westerly area, which is where there's trailer parking, all right? There's a loading bay space, and then there's a two-way drive aisle. I'm assuming the two-way drive aisle is around 24, 25 feet, and then there's the loading bay space.
No, the distance from the rear of the building through the loading space and across that drive aisle is 130 feet. So that drive aisle, in fact, is actually 70 feet. in
Oh,
width.
okay. Okay. Board have any questions for Mr. Catani on this?
As the chairman had said, that the one snow pile would be near an entrance area. So is this, and this is just snow that's being pushed into an area so that it's removed from the other parking spaces and other areas. So as it's melting, is there a continuum of chemical that's put down so that these areas don't become icy and slick for the incoming and outgoing traffic?
Well, the areas that we're providing these piles are in the lower collection areas. So any runoff coming from the drive aisle is coming into these areas as opposed to the snow pile areas melting and flowing away from them. So the piles would not contribute to any additional icing or water on the drive aisles themselves.
So each one of the designated areas are all the lower areas?
Correct.
And how does those piles affect sight lines?
They're internal to the site. They're all stop bar controlled. There will be some piles that might impact on the sight lines, and that is something we would certainly work with the applicant to ensure that there are provisions in their association documents that sight lines aren't impacted by snow piles.
Ms. Newman, would you work with the applicant on that to make sure? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Okay.
Is that it for Mr.
No,
Catani?
no, we have some additional, but there were sort of separate issues, so that's why I thought if the board had questions. There had been some comments at the, towards the end of our last hearing with regard to related to the phasing of construction. And you had advised that this will be built out in phases. The comment had been to whether we were going to install utilities and all of the access in the first phase. Can you respond to that and explain your answer?
Sure, and I apologize. It might be best on the board behind you. I think the pointer does show up on that. I apologize if I blind anyone. So there is quite a bit of off-site water and sewer that's being constructed as part of this project. As part of Phase 1, we anticipate Phase 1 being these three buildings to the furthest east of the property. As part of Phase 1, our intent is to build the full water main loop from County Route 547 down Randolph Road, down Oak Glen, and then down Brook to Lakewood. That will be constructed as part of Phase 1. Additionally, there is a proposal for a gravity sewer main in Randolph Road, running east to west, which will tie in and run just north on Oak Glen to the Ocean County trunk line in this area. Again, that will be constructed as part of Phase 1. Then, internal to the site, we will build the sanitary sewer and water services associated with these first three buildings as part of Phase 1. The sewer for the site does run uphill to the west. Therefore, we can build the sewer as we extend phases to the west without worry of having built the initial section first. Everything runs downhill from west to east, so therefore building Phase 1 does not affect that. Also, from a water standpoint, we're coming off of Oak Glen with a tap. There will be a loop internally. The second tap out onto Randolph would not occur until Phase 3 of the project. This ties in somewhat with some comments from the township professionals regarding not necessarily clearing the entire site unnecessarily. We would essentially just clear as required for the construction of each phase. So Phase 1, essentially, we would have our clearing limit. At this point, we would have the two driveways constructed. When Phase 2 comes on board, we would essentially clear for that and provide an additional driveway as we go. And therefore, we would only be disturbing the minimal amount of land associated with each phase.
Can you just walk through what the second phase, how many buildings comprise the second phase, and what else would be built at that time?
The anticipation would be, Phase 2 would be these two buildings, which would utilize the existing two driveways that were constructed. Then Phase 3 would essentially be these two additional driveways. I'm sorry, the third driveway on Randolph would come in with these two buildings to provide for the vehicular parking on the west. Phase 3 would be these two buildings in this area with their loading and drive aisle and the fourth driveway. And then Phase 4 would be the westernmost portion of the property with the fifth driveway to the furthest west constructed.
What's the proposed time frame of each phase and the time in between the start? So, for instance, you're done with Phase 1, when do you start Phase 2?
I believe, and it's identified in the phasing plan, I believe the overall anticipated timeframe for the entire project is maybe 4 to 5 years, with all four phases occurring in that timeframe. How they would fall within that time period obviously might vary, but that's the expectation.
So, Mr. Catani, is the applicant, I know you're widening Randolph Road, is the applicant paving the full width of Randolph Road after he's done with the widening?
The full width of Randolph and the full width of Oak Glen.
Okay. Would the applicant please consider the water tap to do both of them under the first phase? Simply so that we don't have to go back and open the road a second time.
Absolutely. Under Phase 1, we are building the water main, and the water tap associated with the second point on Randolph would be constructed during the initial Phase 1, and there would be a section of pipe 15 or 20 feet into the property and outside of the cartway.
So you'll stub in so that we're out of the roadway?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, fine. Mr. Cachero, can we make sure that that's in the resolution, if so be?
Well, I mean, if that's what the board decides when it votes, yes, that'll be in the resolution.
I think we need to get it in the record. Okay, so let me, I'm sorry, are there more questions from the board, or?
Well, as long as we got onto the utilities for a second, the electric service is, that you're going to have an on-site transformer, that's going to be a distribution within the site,
Yes.
so there's only one incoming service point.
There'll be one primary incoming service point that would probably create a future loop, which we would be doing in phases as well. Typically, that's something that the utility company gets further into when it comes down to construction time.
All right, but you see, my train of thought is I only want to open the road as once.
We'll have those, by the time we get to construction, we're going to have all those answers, gas, electric, sewer, so we'll have that all hashed out, and all provisions will be made so that there will be no need to go into any of the constructed roadways within the full construction timeframe of the project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Steve, can you describe the stormwater detention facility? I know we've touched on it, but also at what point is that going to be constructed?
The stormwater basin located in the easternmost portion of the site will be constructed as part of Phase 1. It will certainly be oversized for the initial phases of the project, but due to its location and the design of the stormwater management, it will be constructed in Phase 1. It is a large infiltration basin. It will have a sand bottom and will serve to provide water quality as well as the stormwater quantity controls and the recharge controls for the project. And it will and does meet the New Jersey Stormwater Management regulations on all of those accounts.
Okay. All right. We did not get to present our video of the proposed plan last time. We would like to present that now.
Go, Mark.
Counselor, before you do that.
Sure.
There was one other issue that the chief brought up, and I also asked for. The chief was under the opinion that the 5 access drives is excessive, and I tend to agree with him. And when we discussed it at the last meeting, we discussed about that, asking you to prepare a plan that showed an alternate that reduced the number of access drives onto Randolph Road.
Right, we said we would take it under advisement. We're not prepared at this time to revise our plan to change the access that we've proposed. Obviously, my statements are not testimony, but we will have the testimony. The proposal is fully in compliance with your ordinance. We actually have the ability, under your ordinance, to provide additional access points. But I think what we would like to do is defer that discussion to our traffic consultant, since it was raised in the context of access and safety. We think that it's more appropriate that we can deal with it when our traffic engineer speaks.
Okay.
All right, so the video will mark as A20.
Right, and that, I believe, is also was on the thumb drive that had been provided with the initial exhibits, the other diagrams.
We'll check with our
Correct.
AV department.
What?
And this
I said we'll check with the AV department here.
This will be a simulation driving easterly down Randolph Road from County Route 547. It'll give a perspective of the project from Randolph Road, and then we'll finish up with an aerial three-dimensional view of the project.
Somebody asking for snacks.
Yeah, it's the technology is still in.
Get the chief to ticket the video.
Now, one thing this gives you a little bit of perspective on, and which maybe the plan doesn't, there is significant distance between the driveways. The plan doesn't really give it justice. The driveways are, over 400 feet apart. They're not really on top of each other. You can see here, the driveways are 2 full building widths, or in some cases 2 full building widths, or 1 building width, which is, at a minimum 400 feet.
Let me ask Steve, is this an accurate representation of the landscaping that's either being left as existing landscaping and buffer to the street, or as we are going to supplement it?
Both. It's the existing vegetation to remain and the additional vegetation we're going to plant.
So it's an accurate representation of the amount of plantings that will be there when grown?
We believe so, yes. And as indicated, we'll continue to work with the landscape professional to add additional. This is based on the submitted plan. We had indicated in previous testimony we were going to add more landscaping, and
Right, so it looks like, though, a lot of the landscaping shown on there is planted, because I do think we discussed to keep a lot on one of the roadways.
Along Oak Glen and Brook, yes.
Yeah, whereas, the images do look like they've been planted.
Well, we're keeping the 60-foot vegetated strip along Randolph. The entire setback frontage of the property is being maintained. So that existing vegetation within the first 60 feet of the property along Randolph is to remain.
Right, understood. I just don't think it's quite as full as that.
Okay. But we'll provide additional understory, as we indicated previously. We'll provide additional landscaping.
How many truck entrances are there?
There are 3 truck entrances.
And forgive me if we answered this last time, but the truck can just make a right-hand turn. It doesn't have to veer out into the other lane to make that
Correct. The
turn.
curb radii will be adjusted so that the vehicle stays in the right lane and stays in its lane and makes a turn in.
This video brings up one of my concerns, and I'm sorry to keep circling back on
It's okay.
the number of access points, but if you look at this, and could you stop it right there, please, Laura? If a vehicle, if a truck is maneuvering, comes in and is starting to maneuver to access, thank you, one of those loading bays, any trucks that are following behind that are going to pause and wait for that truck to make its maneuver, which is going to cause the trucks to back up onto Randolph Road. What I would like to see is that those access points are offset from the drive aisles, so that, similar to as if you go into a shopping center, all right, when you come in, you have the ability to turn right, turn left, with no opposition, so that there's a continuous flow in.
Well, these drive aisles do, so looking at the photo, we have two drive aisles on either side for each building. So a truck coming in and making this right turn will have free access into both of those drive aisles to make uninhibited entrances into both primary trucks. And this is at both locations. In the first westernmost driveway, that drive aisle allows, it does go backwards, thanks. So keep going back a little bit. That, again, is vehicular access only, so only motor cars will be going in and out of that driveway. That'll be truck access to the primary truck aisle.
So that's a very good indication, all right? So if one of those first trailers comes in and is trying to access a bay that's very close to Randolph Road, he's going to essentially stop any other trucks that are coming in
Well,
behind him.
the trucks that are coming in, this is essentially, there's 3 truck lengths here before you get to the first loading, and then the truck can make this left turn into this aisle if there is a truck here. So if there's a truck on either side, there is access to both drive aisles coming in, and there is enough room in the throat length here that if that's occurring, a truck can fully enter the site without being out on Randolph Road.
Mr. Chairman, what I don't understand is how's this testimony be given when we never even talked about generation of tractor trailers? You're giving testimony what could be done, and we haven't even heard from the experts what the tractor trailer generation is going to be morning and evening.
I'm just speaking to the function of the driveways from a site plan perspective. The traffic engineer can speak to the physical trip generations.
But you're confident that you can make those comments saying that it'll be able to get in without even knowing if there's going to be 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 trucks going in at a time?
Yes, I've been doing these types of applications for many years, and this is a standard traditional operation. This is how they're typically designed, and they function today, and they will continue to function that way. And the traffic engineer can get into more detail on the physical
We'll
trips.
just visit again with the traffic engineer.
Yes.
I want to ask you, and this may not be in your, is there, I know you have certain square footages that you've laid out for each of the buildings. I'm Amazon, and I come to this location, and I say, 150,000 square feet is not large enough for me. Can you give me a warehouse that's 200,000 square feet? Is there any contemplation that you would, keeping the same overall square footage, expand one warehouse to reduce the size of the other warehouse? Where I'm going with this is, you have that center drive aisle running in the east-west direction between the two sets of buildings. Is that always going to be, are you locking yourself into, those buildings are not going to be flexible in size?
But I can tell you that they are,
Right.
if that's what they're proposing, and if they want something different, they would have to come back.
Okay.
Was
Thank-
as if I opened my mouth and that voice came out.
I feel
That was-
sorry for you.
This is the this is the application that's before you. Is there flexibility? Obviously, there's always ways to reconfigure a site, but we acknowledge that if this is the site plan that's approved, then if we were to seek to modify the site plan, whether it's parking areas, drive aisles, or buildings, we would be required to come back to modify that application.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, I think that's all we have for our civil engineer at this time, subject to our right to recall him in the future.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Catani? No?
Thank you.
Mr.
Let's wait for
Cachero,
the-
do we now go to the
Objector.
objector attorney?
Whatever process you'd like, but if you're going to open it up for questioning from the public, my recommendation would be you start with counsel, because he'll probably ask the questions in a way that, others would benefit from.
Okay, that's what my intent is. Counsel? Counselor.
He thinks, then we'll go home. We'll be back. What can I tell you?
Thank you, Chairman. Just in regards to the timing, I know that council wanted to stop to discuss when the next meeting was going to be. If there's a special meeting, or was that automatically going to be carried to June 20th?
The Chairman indicated that June 20th became much less busy for us, and that's the intent of the board.
Okay, thank you. Once again, Craig Bossong from Florio, Prucci, Steiner, and Capelli. Mr. Catani, I heard the chairman talk about the widening of Randolph Road and ask you a question about the widening of Randolph and the traffic. Can you explain exactly what's going to happen to Randolph? What's being proposed?
So the existing right-of-way is going to be, additional dedication is going to be provided to provide a 30-foot half-width for Randolph Road along our frontage on our side. It's currently an undersized right-of-way. I believe it's approximately 33 feet. The master plan anticipates a 60-foot right-of-way width for this roadway. So we are taking and providing a dedication to get 30 feet on our frontage. And then we are going to provide, as requested by the township engineer, a 12-foot travel lane and an 8-foot shoulder along our frontage, and we will repave the entire width of the remaining Randolph Road at that point.
So the total width that'll be paved would be how wide?
It'll vary because the pavement area on the north side of Randolph Road varies and actually veers into some properties outside of the right-of-way. But essentially, it'll be 28 to 36 feet in width, depending on how much pavement is on the other side of the half-width.
But it'll still only be one lane in each direction, correct?
Correct.
And your testimony was that, which direction primarily do you anticipate these trailers coming from, making the turn into your site?
From the west, from County Route 547, to the left of the plan as you're looking at the site plan.
And they'll have no problem making that right-hand turn into the site without having to veer into the other traffic lane.
Yeah, based on comments from the professionals, the curb radii at the driveways will be modified to ensure that the trailers and the trucks will not veer into the oncoming traffic lane.
Looking at, since this picture's up here, am I correct in understanding that the light, almost white-colored area in the middle there are the tractor-trailer parking spots?
Yes,
So in essence, there's no, in your diagram right here, there's no trailers being parked there.
we have not shown any in that image.
But more likely than not, you're going to have trailers parked in those areas, right?
Yes,
And that would affect the flow of traffic throughout that site in relation to where these trucks can pull in and then back into the loading bays.
no, the gray area that represents the drive aisle and the white area up against each building, if you were, if you were to build a retaining wall right down this line of the stalls, if you were to build a retaining wall there, the width from here to here is 130 feet, which is a standard loading module for the truck to come in, back in, and utilize that 130 feet. We could have essentially eliminated this entire area. However, tractor-trailer parking is integral to the operations. This area is just provided for that. The operation of the loading and truck maneuvering occurs within this entire width right here. So trailers parked directly up against this. There's a 55-foot half width here, so there's enough room for two 53-foot boxes to be parked and essentially not overhang into the gray drive aisle. So they would not interfere with the tractor-trailer maneuvering and parking at the loading docks.
Okay. Now, in regards to, I think there was testimony or questions at the last hearing in regards to the trailers being parked in those tractor-trailer parking spots and how long they can stay there as to whether or not they're constituted as storage at that point. And I believe that the comment was made that there'll be additional testimony in regards to how long they would be there, especially if you have a tenant who has their own fleet of trucks. And whether or not that would constitute storage when you have, well, let's say 50 trailers sitting in those parking areas. Because you agree with me that the code doesn't require any type of tractor-trailer parking on the site, right?
If I may, in answer, there's an ordinance provision that we think is dispositive of this. There is a 96-hour outdoor storage limitation. However, the language of the ordinance states, this section shall not apply to motor vehicles or other type of equipment used in the transportation of persons or property. At section 192-18, which we believe exempts this type of equipment that's used for transportation from the time limitation.
Well, counsel, could that be read the other way, though? That since there is a permission for 96 hours and it doesn't cover those vehicles, that those vehicles aren't permitted to be there at all for extended periods of time?
I don't think that's a logical reading. Why would you? That's like saying if you have a bus depot, you can't park your buses there.
I don't think that's what I said, but I understand your statement. Thank you.
But how is enforcement of that reasonable when you're having 100 trailers parked on the site, if that's the case?
I'm telling you that's our interpretation of the ordinance. We'll leave it to, I'm not going to debate it with you, but this is how we've designed the site. It's integral to our permitted warehouse use.
Now, in regards to each individual building, well, you had just talked about you calculated office space in each building when you talked about the number of parking. I think you added additional parking for the consideration of office space in the buildings. How much office space is allocated for each of these warehouse buildings?
Yeah, our traffic professional can go into that, but it's approximately 10% is anticipated to be office.
10% per building or 10% per projected tenant?
10% per building.
So if you have, I mean, I think the testimony was you can go all the way down to a 5,000 square foot minimum space. So in theory, you could have 30 individual units per 150,000 square foot building. But you're going to max them out at 10% total?
That's the calculation, yes.
If I can just, I don't think he said max, I think he said that you did not say estimate or approximate.
That's what we've based the calculation on.
Right.
Well, I think the amount of office space is relevant to the warehouse as to whether or not this is truly warehouse space or this is some type of flex space.
I believe our traffic professional will testify to the anticipation of office use within a warehouse from his traffic standpoint.
So the traffic guy is going to talk about the design of office space inside of a warehouse?
Well, I believe within the calculations, ITE or his methodologies, there's an anticipated percentage of office space within the warehouse use itself.
I'm more concerned with whether this is truly flex space versus warehouse space.
We've testified that it's going to be traditional warehouse.
Now, in relation to going back to the improvements on Randolph Road, you're providing a third full lane on Oak Glen for the turning lanes, correct?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be more beneficial to put a third lane on Randolph if you're anticipating the trucks to come in from the west?
I think that's more appropriate for our traffic professional.
Did the traffic engineer come up with the design of the layout, or did the civil engineer?
It was a joint effort reviewed by all professionals.
Okay. Lastly, the testimony is about this condo form of ownership, commercial condo form. If you have, going back to the hypothetical of 30 individual units per building, 30 individual tenants, would each of those individual units have a say on this condominium association board, or is it per building?
That's not for this witness.
Well, he testified to the condominium association's going to be responsible for the common area.
That's correct.
So the question comes down to how many people are going to be responsible for the maintenance of these common areas? You have an extremely large storm basin that's going to have to be maintained. You have a lot of common area that's going to have to be maintained. If we're talking 200 people that are on this condo board, is anybody really going to be responsible for the maintenance of the...
Counsel, I think they said they're going to have an operations person. Ms. Contra, would that be the person to answer that question? You said it's not for this witness. Is there
Correct.
another witness that could
And
answer
that's
it?
a legal determination, how we're going to set up a condominium. That's not really before the
Well, then when
board.
it's not for this witness, you're really saying we're not going to answer it. I mean, is
We're
that-
certainly not going to answer it through our civil engineer.
Well,
I'm trying to ask a very simple question. Will anybody be answering this question, or are you saying that it's not relevant and nobody will be answering the question?
I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, I think this board should be extremely concerned as to the accountability of the common areas. Who's going to maintain the stormwater basin?
We testified that the condo association would be responsible. You're asking us for how the condominium association is going to be organized.
But you're talking about a unique situation where you're selling off, you're not even saying whether you're selling off a unit or selling off a building, and whether you're going to have some owner in Iowa that has a say on this condo board and is going to be responsible, or is it going to be the individual tenants because they're being subleased? And I think the board has a right to know who's going to be who. When they have a problem on that site, who
yeah.
are they going to contact?
I
Yes,
think-
my question, though, Mr. Bossong, is, like, for a site plan review, what section of our review powers does that fall under?
Maintenance of the
issue?
common areas, maintenance of your stormwater basin, maintenance of your trash and refuse when there's cardboard boxes all over the parking lot.
But if their answer, and I'm not coming to any conclusion, I'm asking so we can flesh this out a little. If the answer from the applicant is that the condo association is going to be responsible, do you feel the board has the power to determine whether that condo association will be responsible enough to actually perform that duty?
I think the board has the right to know who is going to be the anticipated makeup of that condo association that they're going to be interacting with in relation to the maintenance. Are they going to be interacting or trying to get an absentee owner of a building?
Well, let's assume your worst-case scenario, that whatever the worst case is, you know, that you have, are you suggesting that the board, because they're absentee, to use your language, members of the condo association, that we could find that there's not going to be maintenance pursuant to the code? I'm trying to understand, you know, assuming your client's worst fear is actually reality.
Say the stormwater basin fails, right?
Right. So I guess my question is, let's assume you get no more information from the applicant than what they have given. What's the board's power?
Well, the board's power, you mean after this fails, like if it's?
No. I mean, you're bringing up a potential problem with the application. The
Right.
applicant, to this point, has not answered the question to the full extent that you have desired. Let's assume that stays the same, and let's assume we don't have information that you're trying to elicit, and that you represent that your clients still have the same concern. What is it that the board has the power to do?
Well, I think the board has to take that into consideration if they're willing to roll the dice that they don't know who they're going to be interacting with to fix.
Well, I guess
Problems on the site.
Let me be more clear then. Are you saying that the board could actually deny the application based upon that lack of information?
Absolutely.
Ms. Goncher?
If the board doesn't know who's going to be maintaining these common areas and these substantial stormwater systems, absolutely.
I'm not saying you're right, wrong, or anywhere in between, but do you have a case at all, or anything?
Well, both the land use law, which indicates that you can't treat a property a condominium, you can't dictate form of ownership, and the planned residential, the statute dealing with planned residential PREPTA says that you cannot, that a planning board specifically cannot impose any requirement on a development because it's in the condominium form of ownership that they couldn't otherwise impose or treat it any differently because it is a condo. The circumstance that's being proposed is no different than if the owner of this is a joint venture where the actual owner is a REIT in Minnesota. You're going to have someone who manages it or someone who is a representative of them, and the town has the same property maintenance rights that it would have under any other circumstance. What the component or how the representatives are designated is not something that we've drafted or created yet. So I'm not sure how this circumstance, there's an obligation to maintain the basin. We've indicated it would be in the condominium form of ownership. There's an association charged with that, the same as in a residential condominium, and there's generally management that's hired to oversee the day-to-day operation. I don't think we have an obligation to provide any more other than to acknowledge that we've recognized that there is an obligation to continue the maintenance of the basin so it operates for its purpose. And that is no different than if this was subdivided and there were different owners of different buildings, and it's no different if it was one owner who could be absentee, it could be a joint venture or partnership with 25 different owners. So I think this is trying to create an issue that really doesn't exist or isn't any different than any other development that might be on the site, which is also permitted by statute, by your ordinance.
I just think the board has a right to know who's going to be maintaining and who they're going to be dealing with when it comes to problems that are inevitable on the site.
I think the board understands the concern and the comment. Considering that the application will not conclude tonight, though, council, what I'd recommend, or at least offer, is that if you want to, do a little more research to either contest the statutory references Ms. Goncher has provided, or to come up with ones that haven't been discussed or cases that haven't been discussed, the board would certainly be receptive to anything you'd like to submit. I would say the same to applicant's counsel if you want to submit anything as well.
No, absolutely. I think based upon what the civil engineer said, the other questions I have will be reserved for the traffic engineer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is Mr. Catania, please.
Can I open it to the public? Sure. All right, and then I'll give you the opportunity. If there's anyone who would like to come up and ask questions of the applicant's witness, the civil engineer.
And Mr. Chair, the limit to that is if you were represented by counsel that already asked questions, that's not available to you. It's only members of the public who are not represented by counsel tonight.
Thank you. Are you represented by that counselor? Not yet. Not yet? Well, if you like them, please come up, and this is for questions, not testimony. We'll give you an opportunity later on to testify.
Okay, sir, when you come up, if you could just state and spell your name and give us your address.
Yes, my name is Brandon Rio. I live on number 3 Brook Road in Howell, New Jersey. It's spelled Brandonreo. Can I have your pointer? Sure. Thanks. And can you put on that site plan up there, please? Okay. All right. My house is right there, right where that red dot is. That's where I live, okay? Then you got this big retention basin, okay? All right. My question to you is, with this cavalier stance you have on the responsibility, whoever it is that maintains this drainage basin,
I'm sorry, I don't think I've exhibited a cavalier attitude
well,
towards anything.
listen, you guys are avoiding the question of whether or
Well,
not,
sir.
or who will be.
Sir, just ask the
Okay,
question. The board
my
will
question
determine
is,
what everyone's demeanor
without
is.
even knowing who's doing the maintenance on this thing, or whether they will or not, okay? And that's what I just heard from the last testimony, okay? We're looking at 738 parking spaces, 142 tractor-trailer spaces, okay? It's possible for 3 shifts a day, but if we even went with 2, that's a total of 1,760 vehicles per day coming in and out of this place. If you go further with the math,
Sir,
per month,
Is this a question as to how much traffic the
Well-
development is going to
well,
generate?
it's twofold, because I'm concerned about the storm drain basin being within 300 feet of my well.
All right, so you can ask him the question on the storm basin.
Okay,
They will be bringing in a traffic engineer to testify on the amount of traffic, all right? That's the individual that you can question as to how much traffic,
okay.
all right?
But,
So ask him the question on the storm basin.
okay, how are you going to maintain the possibility of runoff derived from untold number of dumpsters, possibly 591,360 vehicles coming in and out of this place per year, with all that runoff going into that storm drain? How you're going to protect my well from being contaminated?
I'm not a geologist, so I wouldn't offer to answer that question.
Okay, well, someplace along the line, before you guys say it's okay, I think you should get a geologist on this thing.
Hold on one second. All right. Counselor, you heard the gentleman's concern. Can you bring a witness in that will be able to address that question?
I'd love to hear it.
We'll discuss that, yes.
All right, sir, her response is that they will discuss bringing someone in, all right? The board has heard your question,
Okay.
all right? And we will get to the bottom of it.
All right, there's no other chance for comments of any kind?
No,
When the applicant is done with all their testimony, I will open it up to the public, and you can make as many comments, and you can say whatever you like. Right now, it's just strictly questions of the witness.
Okay. And when will you allow the public to express various other concerns concerning things like wildlife, which I observe daily out there?
As the applicant brings up witnesses, that witness may testify on that. That's when you can ask the question.
Okay. All right, I'll be here. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for listening.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Please step forward.
Good evening, Joan Osborne, 28 Bronia Street, Howell.
Are you represented by the counselor?
No,
Okay, thank you.
Just for the record, if you just spell your name.
Osborne.
Okay.
My first question is
Could you speak directly into the mic?
with regard to the buildings. Was there any consideration of using solar rooftops or solar covers over the parking spaces at all, or to, make this a more environmentally friendly application with regard to that?
I believe that's an architect or an owner question.
And he will specifically address the solar issue.
Okay. You talked tonight a little bit about the snow melt, and the people in the audience didn't get an opportunity to see your exhibit. But are the locations where the snow is going to be piled going to account for treating that as it melts, because it will include snow melt chemicals or salt, before it goes into maybe the detention basin or wherever you intend it to go before it reaches the river?
Other than the standard stormwater management features, there was no other controls put in place for that.
That's a bad answer.
Okay. Now, you indicated that there's not going to be a separated turning lane for the trucks going into the facilities, but you anticipate that they won't have to make wide turns and go into the oncoming travel lane. Doesn't that assume a lot as far as the skills of the driver and the knowledge of the driver as to what they're going to be encountering once they make the turn? I mean, I think that's, do you agree that that's an assumption?
I think the traffic professional would speak to the assumptions for traffic.
And the site includes a large area that is going to be buffered because it is along the river. Do you, as the applicant, have any intention of doing anything with that area at all?
No, it's a regulated area, and this application intends to do nothing in that area.
Okay, so do you need that for the application? Is that something that, because it's a riparian buffer along the Batita Conch, that could be deeded to the county or the township so that they could protect the river?
That's not really for me to answer.
But well, can you answer as to whether ownership of that riparian buffer is necessary to the application in any way?
It's not.
Well, but let me ask
Does
you,
it function?
was that part of the area of the site that was used in calculations?
Yes, it is part of the property and is used in the calculation of zoning compliance.
How is it used in calculation of zoning compliance?
It's acreage within the owned property, so it's acreage that's calculated as ownership.
So if you didn't own it, you would have to have smaller warehouses? Is that what you're saying? Or wouldn't be able to build as much warehouse space?
That's possible.
Is it used, for example, in calculating impervious cover?
Yes,
The
it is.
total acreage is part of that calculation,
It
since
is,
they
yes.
would own the property, yes.
And currently, you don't anticipate doing anything at all, like using it as an amenity for the workers or anything of that nature?
No.
Okay. With regard to the parking that was calculated, 732 spaces is based on the amount of warehouse space, correct?
With additional office space calculated above and beyond that anticipated in generic warehousing.
Okay,
So it's conservatively calculated.
and at this time, it has no relation to the anticipated number of employees?
It's based on square footage.
Okay, so that would be yes, it has no relation to the anticipated number of employees?
No.
Okay.
Excuse me, can I just, what does the ordinance require?
The ordinance requires it calculated based on square footage.
So it's going to be a lot of impervious coverage that may or may not be used?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know, acreage-wise, how much it's going to add up to?
How much the additional,
How much the 732 parking spaces that may or may not be used is going to be?
well, 732 is the required parking. So that's not a may or may not be used, that's based on the ordinance calculation. That times the area of a parking stall, I could do the math, but that's the required parking, so we anticipate that it's going to be used.
But you anticipate that without knowing of what any of the tenants are going to be and how many employees. So it could be empty. It could be largely empty a lot of the time, but it's there because the town's requiring that many.
Correct.
And you don't have any idea of how many acres that's going to add up to? It's parking space that may or may not be used.
I could do the math, I can't, it's 700 times approximately 200 for the parking stall, so 140,000 square feet, so maybe 3 acres.
Okay. Have you considered seeking a waiver to have
Approximately.
parking that only is required for the anticipated operations?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Have you contemplated seeking a waiver to reduce the amount of parking so that it more closely matches the anticipated operations?
We're not asking for a parking variance.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like to ask questions of this witness? Seeing none, I'm going to close this portion of this witness. Counselor,
Thank you.
we're a little past your 1 hour time. I think it's a convenient stopping point. I did indicate, Mr. Kuchera, that we will put this on the June 20th agenda. So can you make the official announcement,
Yeah,
please?
and also, just before I do that, just some parting thoughts or a parting thought. The section of the ordinance that was cited earlier on outdoor storage, that's not in our land use section. That's actually in our general legislative section under littering. There's a different outdoor storage section in our land use section, in the zoning section, 188-79. So I'm not going to go into it, but I think that's probably something
We'll look at, sure.
that's relevant to look at. Okay. So, the application of Monmouth Commerce Center, case number SP-1052, will be carried to the board's June 20th, 2019 meeting, beginning 7 o'clock here at Town Hall. There'll be no further notice to property owners, so if you receive notice in the mail initially, you will not receive another notice. Again, it'll be beginning 7 o'clock here in Town Hall. If anybody wishes to take a look at the file, it's available during normal business hours at Eileen's office.
Thank you.
And Mr. Catani will come back with you, right?
Yeah, I think we missed a question, sorry, we'll make sure we cover that.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. If we
Just
do.
real quick,
Can I,
Mr. Catani?
is that all
Are we
right?
allowed to
Yeah.
answer it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on, one
Please.
sec. She has to
Go
turn
ahead.
back on the
Okay.
machine.
You shut down too fast.
I did. Out of here.
Go ahead.
Just based on your earlier testimony, and your testimony is how the property will be developed if approved, you don't anticipate the trailer loading spaces to be in for what, 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, they're going to be part of phase 3 and 4, so that would be later on in the phasing, correct.
Okay, and second question relating to that. Have you considered the on-site traffic flow when the easternmost warehouses want to get their trailers from the spots between the further western warehouses?
Yeah, so we have the primary two drive aisles, the drive aisle down the center and the drive aisle down the south, which are completely separated drive aisles and are intended for primary vehicular traffic separated from the internal drive aisle traffic.
Okay. Now you can shut down.
Now? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on. Next case we are going to hear is SP 1058, New Jersey Natural Gas Company. This application is for preliminary and final major site plan. Application of New Jersey Natural Gas Company as applicant and Fairfield and Howell LLC as owners, seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval to construct a 30,000 square foot, two-story building to be utilized as a training/education facility for New Jersey Natural Gas employees, third-party contractors, and emergency first responders personnel. The site plan also calls for outdoor training areas for oversized vehicle and heavy construction equipment operations, and areas containing shed-like structures to simulate buildings and homes, including various appliances, meters, and equipment associated with utility service systems and operations, along with landscape and lighting improvements, a monument-type site identification sign, a refuse enclosure area, and an 8-foot-high perimeter fence on premises known as Block 177, lots 5.01 and 6, 401 Fairfield Road. Counselor.
Good evening, board members. I'm Nancy Skidmore from the law firm of Connell Foley. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, New Jersey Natural Gas Company. That quite detailed summary included, we are seeking a preliminary and final site plan approval for the construction of a 30,000 square foot, two-story training facility, which shall be utilized for federally mandated operator qualification training for utility workers working on public utility gas infrastructure. In addition, the facility will be offered to local first responders in the area for emergency training. The property is 17 acres in size, and it is located at 401 Fairfield Road here in Howell Township. It is located within the SED zoning district. NJNG is indeed the contract purchaser of the site. The proposed facility is indeed a permitted use as a utility use within the SED zone. We do not require any variances, but we do require several design waivers. As a matter of housekeeping, I did prepare, publish, and mail a notice to property owners in accordance with statutory requirements. That affidavit of service and publication was submitted to Ms. Rubano last week.
It's in order.
With me tonight, I have Mr. Brian DeCina, who is my site engineer from French and Perillo.
Hold on one second, Ms. Gizmo. Mr. Cachero, have you had an opportunity to review?
They don't send them to me, so I don't review any of the notices unless somebody objects.
Okay. Are there any objector attorneys for this application?
To recap, with me tonight, I have Mr. Brian DeCina, who is our site engineer from French and Perillo. I have Steve Radasti from Perez and Radasti Associates. He is our expert architect on the project. I also have with me Mr. Brian Fitzpatrick from New Jersey Natural Gas Company. And finally, I have Allison Coffin, who is our expert planner from James Higgins Associates. I should add that I have with me tonight Mr. John Ray from McDonough and Ray Associates. He is our expert traffic engineer. I don't intend to call him as an affirmative witness unless the board has any questions or the board's consultants have any questions. Certainly, he's here to answer those. What I would first intend on doing is calling Mr. Cecina to give the board an overview of the area we're talking about, the existing conditions on the site, and the design proposal that we are presenting to the board. Then I would have Mr. Radasti present the architectural elements. Mr. Fitzpatrick from NJNG will be presenting on the operations of the facility, and then, of course, Ms. Coffin will give you her expert opinion as it relates to the the waivers that we seek. I do have one request, and I recognize this is out of the ordinary. Given the fact that I recognize the board has a very full agenda this evening, I would ask that we be permitted to present all of our witnesses in one go, and then we can respond to any questions the board may have and the public may have at that time. I do think that I can finish within an hour, including questions from the board and the public. While our attempt is to have a very streamlined presentation, it is quite comprehensive. So I think that if you're able to hear all witnesses in advance, we'd probably answer a lot of your questions. So I'd ask the board to consider that.
All right, well, let's go through, Mr. Casina, and I'll think about that as we go.
I appreciate that.
Okay, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name.
Brian Decina, last name D-E-C-I-N-A, with the firm French and Perlo.
Mr. Cecina, can you provide the board the benefit of your background in educational experience and qualifications?
Yes, I can. Good evening. Brian Decina, French and Perlo Associates out of Wall, New Jersey. I'm a graduate of Villanova University with a Bachelor of Science and Civil Engineering degree. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania with over 20 years' experience. I have testified in front of this board a couple times, as well as other boards throughout the state of New Jersey.
So, Mr. Casina, your license is current with the state board?
Yes, it is.
Are there any actions pending against you?
No, they're not.
Okay. We'll accept Mr. Casina as an expert in civil engineering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with
Excuse
that,
me, Ms. Skidmore, you can sit, because that is a mic in the center of the table, if you
I
wish.
was just going to ask you that, but I didn't want to interrupt.
Yes, you can go ahead.
and I would also ask that we take that exhibit and move it a lot closer.
We're going to hand them out. We have to mark it first.
Okay.
Yeah, I provided reduced copies. I also have it on the screens in digital format, as well as this. I can move this closer if you prefer.
Yeah.
Brian, if you just want to say what that is, and we'll mark it in. Is that what it's-
My first exhibit, I believe, is A15.
15.
A15. It's titled Aerial Image, Sheet 1 of 1, with a date of May 30th, 2019. It is an image obtained from the New Jersey GIN 2015 aerial photo.
This is A18. I'm sorry, what are we marking this, what number?
A15.
A15?
A15.
Thank you.
So we have here A15 is an aerial image of the surrounding properties. In blue is the subject property, which is known as Block 177, Lot 501 and 6. It's approximately 17 acres and is located at 401 Fairfield Road. It's on the east side of Fairfield Road, as you can see on the exhibit. To the north is Route 33, where Route 33 Highway and Business split. The property is located in the SED, Special Economic Development Zone, which continues along Route 33 Business to the northwest. To the direct west of the property is the Highway District HD2 zone, as well as to the direct east of the property. To the north, across Route 33, is the ARE2 zone. The property is currently undeveloped, previously served as a farm. It has approximately about a 3.5 to 4 acre overgrown farm field in the center of the property, as you can see on the exhibit. The remainder of the property is wooded. Freshwater wetlands exist at the rear of the property and to the south, which have been delineated and verified by NJDEP via a letter of interpretation. And the property has approximately 380 feet of frontage along Fairfield Road. It does have about 790 feet of lot width, and I'll get into that. The property is conforming to the zone requirements for lot size, width, and frontage. Next exhibit, which also is reduced copies I have, is going to be A16.
And what is this?
And this is entitled Property Parcel Map. And what this map illustrates is the property in question as it relates to the property frontage I just previously mentioned as 380 feet. It does span 790 feet, but there is a parcel that DOT owns, which is highlighted in yellow. It was a piece of property that was acquired by DOT in the 70s for the possible realignment of Fairfield Road to provide a better intersection with Route 33. Fairfield Road was never realigned, the property was obtained, and DOT does have rights to that property, that parcel, which is about a 15-foot deep lot, spanning about a 210-foot length. The two orange pieces that you see here, the one to the south that hugs that DOT parcel is a slope access easement which was obtained for the possible realignment of Fairfield Road, and the northern orange rectangle with a stem coming out, that it was for a stormwater outfall structure that was never constructed. Again, that was their stormwater management system that was supposed to be constructed for the realignment. Again, none of that was constructed, but those encumbrances still exist on the property. All right, moving right along to the proposed improvements. What I have here is, I believe now it's A17. A17 is part of the submission packet. It is my sheet number 8 of 17, and it is the landscape plan. The only difference between the plan that was in the set and the plan that is up here is that it's a colorized version. As Mrs. Skidmore mentioned, this proposal is for New Jersey Natural Gas for a proposed training center, as you can see here on Exhibit A17. New Jersey Natural Gas is proposing a training facility at the subject property, which will include a 2-story, 30,000 square foot training facility located in the center of the property, colored in a light brown. The facility will have access from Fairfield Road to the north via a 36-foot wide drive. As part of the proposal, we are proposing a right-of-way dedication of Fairfield Road of about another 7.5 feet. Currently, the right-of-way is 35-foot wide, so it's a 17.5-foot half width. We're providing an additional 7.5-foot right-of-way dedication to conform to the master plan, which is a 50-foot right-of-way.
Sorry to interrupt you, Brian, but just to clarify that, since we are the contract purchaser here, that dedication, as you would expect, is subject to us taking title of the property.
That is correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
So with that right-of-way dedication, the building is set back approximately 227 feet from the new proposed right-of-way line along Fairfield Road, 220 feet to the side property line to the north. It is about 790 feet from the rear property line. Does conform to the ordinance for setbacks, and the parking lot, as you can see in the lighter gray color, is located at the front of the building between the building and Fairfield Road. As I mentioned earlier, site access will be through a 36-foot wide paved drive, 1 lane in, 1 lane out, gated control through a card reader. Again, this is for the use of NJNG's employees and operators. So it is a gated property with fencing around, 8-foot high security fence around. And as you enter the site through the card reader, gate opens up and you would head south to the parking area. There is 132 parking stalls proposed, 8 of which are handicap accessible, which are located to the southern part of the building closest to the entrance. A 30-foot wide paved circulation drive around the building for emergency vehicles has been provided. A turning temple plan has been submitted to the board and is part of my set. Does show complete circulation around the entire property and clean movements. To the south of the parking lot is a fenced-in area for pipe installation and backhoe training area, which Mr. Fitzpatrick will get into a little more detail later on the operations of that. To the rear of the property is what we call Safety Town. It is a smaller version of the real world. It's smaller, small like sheds that resemble townhouses single-family dwellings where where operations and training will be performed in the back. Again, that will be further described by Mr. Fitzpatrick. There is a proposed storage shed here, which will house compressors, as well as the emergency RV vehicle that NJNG currently owns. And to the north, there is a grass paver area for driver operating, turning around movements for larger type vehicles that NJNG currently has in their fleet. The stormwater management system for this facility is your standard curb inlet type system, underground piping, conveying the water underground to the detention basin, which is located at the rear of the property, as you can see on Exhibit A17. It is a detention basin, not a retention basin, so that will handle the water quantity. The water quality and groundwater recharge will be handled through series of perforated pipes and permeable pavement sections that are located at the property. So that will handle your water quality and your recharge. It does meet your stormwater ordinance for reductions in post-development runoff, and it does meet the groundwater recharge requirements as well. Site lighting will be handled through light poles that will be scattered throughout the property, LED downlit lights. They are dark sky compliant. They're 17-foot high poles on 3-foot high concrete pedestals. The lighting has been designed in accordance with IES standards for safety and security and is dimmable. When the rear property is not being used, that will be turned off. The front will still remain lit to provide safety and security for the passenger car parking area and the building. To the north of the plan is the trash enclosure, which will house the recyclable and refuse containers. It'll be fenced around with a concrete modular block, as well as landscaping as required by ordinance. And to the north, we are proposing a 6-foot high berm with landscaping to comply with the requirements of the zone. The property will receive, property does not have any potable water or sanitary sewer mains within the area. The closest sanitary sewer main is about 2 miles to the south, and the closest water main is about a mile to the south. So this site will be handled by an on-site subsurface sewage disposal system, which is a septic system, and a potable well. Landscaping, as you can see here, we are providing landscaping throughout the parking lot, street trees along Fairfield Road, a landscape 50-foot buffer to the north, and landscaping throughout the rear of the property and within the detention basin.
I think we were going to talk about, there's a sign, we're proposing a monument sign.
Yes, I apologize. There is a monument sign we're proposing, which is located just to the north of the access drive. It is located 20 feet from the proposed right-of-way, which is in accordance with the ordinance. I mocked up a color rendering of the detail. This detail is located within my set of plans on the detail sheet. It is also
A18.
A18.
Where is that sign going to be positioned?
That is just to the north of the site driveway, 20 feet back from the proposed right-of-way, which would be 27.5 feet from the current right-of-way. So ordinance requires it no closer than 20 feet, which we are proposing, as I just mentioned. It has to be no larger than 12 feet long by 3 feet high or 4 feet long by 10 feet high. The sign is 7.5 feet long by 2'8" tall. So it does comply with your sign ordinance, and it has to be located on a pedestal that no greater than 2 feet, which this is 2 feet, and it has to have ground cover and landscaping around the bottom, which you can see here. So this line does comply with your sign ordinance.
Now, we are requesting some waivers for this application. I'm going to ask you to talk about 5 of those. If you want to start with the lighting first.
Ms. Skidmore, is he going to go through the engineer's letter?
We can. We were going to touch on the waivers, and then when we're finished with that, we were going to go through the review letters, and, you know, if we have any issues with them or not, it's up to the board how you would like to handle that.
I'm getting, there's a lot of questions on what he's just testified on. All right? I'm thinking that I would like to go witness by witness. all right? Rather than,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I know you want to try to complete it tonight, but
Okay.
I don't want to be
It's-
rushed through this.
It's up to the board.
Okay, so, however, if you want to do this,
Could we go through the waivers, and then if you want to hold your questions till then, and,
that's fine.
okay?
Okay, the first waiver we're requesting is the light intensity waiver. Section 188-22 states that a minimum of .3 foot candles anywhere on the property shall be maintained and an average of .5 foot candles maximum shall be provided. We are providing lighting only within the developed areas, so the .3 foot candles anywhere. We are not proposing any lighting along the grassed areas or bermed areas to the property lines. The light levels to this area are at 0 foot candles. We're trying to prevent spillage to our neighbors. So that is something that we are asking a waiver for because, again, we are not trying to maintain a .3 on all pieces of the property. And the maximum average of .5 foot candles. Again, this is designed to meet IES standards, and IES standards requires a minimum foot candle reading at any point within the parking lot or walkway of .6 for this type of use. So a .6 foot candle in one location is going to well exceed your .5 average over the entire site. Unless I'm taking the entire 17 acres, then I can comply. But within the developed area, I'm about 1.5 foot candles average.
And what IES standard are you referencing exactly?
It's the illumination engineering standard.
I know that. What standard? What table?
I don't have the table off the top of my head, but it's the table for this type of use for parking lots for an office.
Woodlands Management, we are seeking a waiver from the town's Woodlands Management ordinance. Brian, could you talk about that?
Yes, as part of the application, as I mentioned earlier, the site is 17 acres, approximately 4 acres of it was an existing vacant, overgrown farm field. The remainder is wooded. Part of the application, my landscape architect had identified 2 sections of the property where they performed a tree plot of 65 feet by 65 feet and identified trees within that tree plot and then translated that into what the amount of trees would be in a typical acre on this property. And that was part of our submission as the Woodland Management Plan. As part of that plan, we are proposing a clearing of about 3.4 acres of trees, low-lying brush, which has been used in our calculation of those trees. A lot of the trees on site, we worked with your township CT recently out in the field and walked the site. A lot of the trees are either of low quality or have been overtaken by heavy vines. We still identified those in our tree plot and used that number to calculate the trees that we need to replace. As you know, your ordinance has, as the trees get larger, you have a larger quantity required. We are proposing 180 trees of replacement, not counting the street trees along Fairfield Road, and approximately 230 shrubs and bushes throughout the property. Again, we're not meeting the entire quantity that's required based on your ordinance, so therefore we're requesting a waiver. The site is completely wooded, as you can see beyond this, so there really is no other area to replant, any more vegetation. And again, with this training area and the use proposed, we have provided the best landscape plan we can come up with.
How many trees would have been required under the ordinance?
I believe, again, if we didn't take out poor, fair, because my tree plots identified in that tree plot, there were poor species that were dying back and fair species. If we kept those in, I think it's about 1,000 trees. If you take those out, it would be a lot less. So we were counting whatever tree we found within that tree plot, regardless if it was in good condition or poor condition.
All right. Is that the right
Ms. Spira, you want to weigh in on this?
Right, so we did meet out in the field, and a lot of the trees are in poor condition. However, this, the calculations that he has on the plan, I asked him to tweak a little bit, but even with the calculations I used with the maximum contribution at $35,000, it's still coming out to about around $60,000 is what they'd end up contributing.
Well, I wasn't asking that question.
Sorry.
What I was asking was,
How much total?
how many trees did the ordinance require to be replanted? They're replanting 180, so how many of the required trees are they not replanting?
Let me do the math.
Do we know?
Well, it's still going to be the maximum amount, so if you want to use your $35,000 per acre divided by $300 for a tree, it's 116 trees per acre, and he said 3.42. Sorry, I mistyped, yeah, 1,356.
Is it, so is it 1,000?
That's just their maximum number, so that's taking your maximum ordinance number per acre times 3.42 they're clearing. So using that number and then subtracting how many trees they have going in, I think he does come out to about 60,000 is what he put into the tree fund.
The number I illustrated in my plans is 1,018, if I can read that number correctly, on sheet 10 of my set. That's what we calculated.
So, but basically, if I did 1,356 minus 180, that would be roughly the amount of trees that were required to be planted that are not being planted, that there's going to be a contribution for.
Yeah, wait. Yeah, that would be, wait, let me look at.
Mr. DeCina, can I just ask you to clarify what you've shown in terms of what we need to replace per the ordinance? Because I feel like there's a little bit of a discrepancy here. I thought,
Because what you have on the ordinance is not, or on your plans is not exactly what the ordinance like, the ordinance doesn't allow, didn't you take off? You have the calculations, I remember them being.
Sherry, into the mic, please.
Sorry. Well, let me read it again. All right. Give me a minute. I have.
Yeah, on sheet 10, on the right-hand side is the calculations, how we came up with our replacement quantities. And the bottom left-hand of that page is the chart that summarizes.
Okay, here it is. I knew there was some, so I didn't see the 5. So the evergreen trees, you have them multiplied at 500. That's where so in my letter, I asked for you to multiply by 300, which is what the ordinance allows. That's where we have a discrepancy between my calculations versus
You're talking
yours.
dollars, right?
Right.
For quantity, you mentioned 1,300. I got 1,018, so there's a 300 quantity difference.
But the requirement would have been somewhere between 1,018 and 1,356, and you would subtract the 180
I think
that
your
you put
number's
in.
different, though, because you're using 500 on what the trees cost, that's why. The ordinance only allows $300.
I think based upon this, I've got what I was asking for, which is the 1,356 trees. You're putting 180, so there's like a 1,176 tree deficit. All right. And my other question was just, this is a federally mandated training facility, that's what I heard?
yes.
So, like, the size of the building and the way that the site is laid out is pursuant to, certain federal standards that you have to meet, right?
Let me just clarify that, and I will have a witness who will talk about the operations, but the federally mandated portion is for the qualification training itself. So to answer your question, and Mr. Fitzpatrick will correct me later on if I'm wrong, the size of the building and the layout of the safety town in the rear is not specifically federally mandated, but there'll be discussion of this is
That's
kind
fine,
of an industry
wherever the
standard.
appropriate time is.
So, Sherry, I'd just like to circle back. Mr. DeCina made a representation that he's planted as much as possible. I would just like to weigh in on that. I mean, can we get more on the site?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible to get more. They do have some areas that are open. I mean, the site has, they put in buffer plantings along the residential area. I did ask for additional plantings over there, so certainly they could fit some more in the 50-foot buffer towards the road. I do know there is an open area that they have some training to go into, which is why they can't plant that one section. So I mean, they could definitely get a few more trees on, but certainly not a 1,000.
So would the applicant have any problem working with our certified tree expert?
Absolutely not.
Okay, thank
Be
you.
fine with that.
You want to continue with the waivers?
I do. I believe we are asking for a waiver for publicly usable site furnishings at the building entrance. Could you just talk about that very briefly?
Sure. This is, again, this is a private facility. Again, I mentioned earlier, it is a gated site for use by New Jersey Natural Gas's employees and operators specifically. So providing bike racks and outside furniture really is not promoting any public use other than the employees itself.
We are also, well, technically, we are also looking for a sidewalk.
That's correct.
In this area. Could you talk a little bit about that and the situation we're confronted with there?
Well, the waiver from section 220-225G requires all lots to have a private walkway access to a public sidewalk within the right-of-way. Again, private sidewalk from the site to the right-of-way. Again, this is a private facility, gated, not promoting any pedestrian traffic in. Sidewalks along the right-of-way.
Well, yeah, hold on one second, okay? You keep saying, and I can appreciate it for New Jersey Natural Gas employees, all right? We'll get to that in a minute because you made representations about contractors and first responders, all right? But what happens if somebody gets a carpool, all right, and he gets dropped off on Fairfield Road? He walks into the facility. It is plausible, all right? Why can't we do something to accommodate pedestrian traffic in?
If it's the board chair's intention and the board's intention, we'd be happy. We are limited as to where we can put a sidewalk in. I'll let Mr. DeCina testify as to what is within the area, but that's certainly something we would do within the area that we own, or will own, I should say.
Well, so there's two different things that we're talking about, if I'm understanding.
Okay.
One is a sidewalk along the frontage, which is a separate discussion, and then there's a sidewalk from Fairfield into the site. You're going to own the whole site, correct?
We will own the whole site, yes.
Yes. So first, let's address the sidewalk from Fairfield into the site. Can we do that?
Mr. DeCina.
I mean, we can certainly accommodate if that's what the board requests.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 5-foot wide sidewalk.
The one thing I would add...
Could I ask an operational question, though? I just want to be clear. Is this and the only reason I ask this, Mr. Chairman, is maybe there's a little bit of operational. This is a training facility. I'm not sure that we want to encourage people to walk into this site.
I was just going to say that, Ms. Newman. That is the only... We're happy to accommodate the board in any way it would like, as long as it isn't inconsistent with the operations, but this isn't a publicly accessible site. So the idea behind not having sidewalks, outside of the fact that there aren't sidewalks in the whole area, is that we don't want people walking in from the street. It's not accessible to the public. But I understand the board's concern.
Okay, so I can appreciate that. Are you telling me that this, obviously there's a gate at the entrance, all right? And is there a fence around the remainder of the site?
That's correct. The entire parcel, limit disturbance is an 8-foot high fence.
Is it a card swipe?
Card swipe, that's the island in the middle here, is an island card reader.
So if, other than an employee should come in, a work person of some type of repair type person, they would have, it's only going to be your employees that's going to do any repairs, everyone will have a card.
Everyone have a card.
So
As
the
well as
contractors-
police.
So the contractors that you referenced in your application and the training of the first responders, how are we going to handle that? Or how are you going to handle it?
I'm going to
See,
ask...
I think if I may, you're asking questions when we didn't even hear from the operations manager, so maybe we should understand the operations before we start going into these types of...
It's an access issue into the site. You want,
I prefer to ask our operations specialist if that's okay with you.
fine, okay.
I think I know the answer, but I don't want to testify,
Testify,
so...
yeah. Okay. All right, let's continue with the waivers.
So continuing on the sidewalks, again, one of the other waivers is providing sidewalks along Fairfair Road. As Mrs. Skidmore mentioned, there are no sidewalks along Fairfair Road in this area. Again, as I mentioned earlier too, with the DOT property to the south and those easements, there's really limited areas where we can actually construct sidewalks that would make any sense. So we are respectfully asking for that waiver.
Mr. Sina, I think I had one more on my mind, but I think I can have Mr. Radasti go through that regarding signs, because we're going to be talking about that. At this point, I was going to go through review letters. I don't know if
I would just like to ask a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
With respect to the site lighting, all right, fully understand what you were talking about. One of the things that the board would like is during the nighttime, when the facility is not in use, to lower the light levels to security level lighting. Would the applicant have any problem with that?
Absolutely not.
The fixes are outside compliant, yes. And it's going to be the white LED, correct?
Correct.
And you made a statement that the brick pavers or the porous pavers are going to be used for water quality,
Correct.
all right? I've never done that, all right? Could you explain that one?
It's actually porous pavement, so it's asphalt. So most of the parking lot here that drains to the lower elevations, those lower elevations will have a different type of pavement. It looks like pavement, but it has more of an open
Yeah, it's
floor
open,
to it.
open aggregate.
And in that pavement section, there's a storage bed below it, a stone bed, that runoff will convey through that pavement section into that storage bed. That storage bed there will slowly release into the groundwater and provide that filtration.
So isn't it a fact that they dissuade you from using salt and sand on porous pavement because it tends to clog the gaps in the asphalt?
That's an assumption. It's been, if you drive on the Parkway, you can see certain sections as you drive on the Parkway and 195 where you get that spray up from the guy in front of you, and then all of a sudden it stops. There's porous pavement on those highways, and they use a lot more sand and salt than this facility will use.
Okay, I mean, it's your property, so if you have icing issues in the winter, because it's, and if you have, let me just ask, Ms. Newman, concern, porous pavement, clogging, and not being able to handle runoff?
It is a maintenance issue. I have seen instances in the past, if you're not properly maintaining it because of salt, those issues occur. This is a private facility. They'd be required to submit an operations and maintenance manual. And they, if the township became aware of an issue or they're not properly monitoring it, they're required and bound by that manual.
All right, so if for some reason it does clog, it's flooding on their site, and it's not going, there's no possibility that that flooding would run off onto Fairfield Road?
Absolutely not.
Okay, all right, so it's your problem. Okay. TikTok, I know. Well, I mean, we have, so we have an email from the township engineer. Have you seen that?
I've seen two emails from the township engineer, one from the end of March, March 28th, I think, and the second I received 20 minutes before I left the office today. So, but I will say most of those comments, and we'd like to address those if you had specific questions as to those issues, but there was an issue raised at the end that was new, and I haven't really had a very good opportunity to look at that. I do have some comments, initial comments, but do you have specific questions? You just want us to run through them?
Well, I'd like to go through them, all right?
Okay. Mr. DeCina, and I think this is in the March 28th review letter by email by Mr. Herman. There was a request that we dedicate some property, and I think you've talked about that, but if you just want to
That's correct.
recap that.
Mr. Herman mentioned that this right-of-way for Fairfield Road under the master plan is a 50-foot right-of-way, and currently it is 35 feet, as mentioned earlier. So the half width is 17 and a half feet. We're proposing the extra 7.5 foot of right-of-way dedication on our side to bring it to a 25-foot wide half width.
Do you have the email, so you could just reference the number?
I do. Oh, you mean the exhibit?
No, just like whether it's number one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can tell you it is the first one. I do have it.
Okay, so number one from the March 28th.
Correct.
Yes.
email.
and-
Okay,
and
okay. So that you will do.
Well, I want to clarify that a little bit.
Okay, sure.
And I summarized that, and I think Brian just summarized that well. In order for us to create a 25-foot half width, we need to dedicate 7.5 feet, which we're more than willing to do on our site, subject to us closing title.
Right. We understand that.
Right, but the area, the original intention, I believe, of Mr. Herman was that we would dedicate the entire frontage, inclusive of the property that is owned by the NGDOT, and that we cannot dedicate because we don't own it. So I'd like to clarify that.
And I had a meeting with Mr. Herman, and it's my understanding that the town has been in contact with the DOT, and the town will be acquiring the property from the DOT, because the town can get that property.
That is, Mr. Chairman, it's referenced in the most recent email from Mr. Herman, so I think we just let him basically speak for himself with the words he used in the email, which was that NJDOT was receptive to the abandonment, and apparently it has to go through 10 different committees within DOT in order for that to happen. So,
Right, but as my conversation with Mr. Herman, if the town acquires the property, it's a lot faster process as opposed to if the applicant does it. So I'm comfortable with what you're saying. It's
Okay.
being addressed.
I would like to, another component of, and we're referring to, Mr. Cucchiaro, the June 6th email, and
Yeah.
it's
mhm.
the first comment. Mr. Herman also suggests that we would relocate the access back to this southern area.
Right. Because there's two issues here, essentially. Issue one is you have nothing to do
We
with
don't.
whether the town wants to acquire it or not. It's not your property, you have no interest in it, as you
require
have
parcel.
revised the plan. So, but part two is, if there's a request that you now have your access running through that lot, then now it is an issue.
That is an issue.
For you.
And-
Okay.
and so we would like the access where we're currently proposing it, and I'll explain why. The process that Mr. Herman, and he identified that he's been in contact, which is wonderful, with the DOT, his own contact, and I think he highlighted that it had been through certain units for approval, and they are expecting approval within the DOT in the next 4 to 6 weeks. That is my understanding of the excess property conveyance process. That is the smallest piece of the process. And while it is a shorter process when it comes to dedication to the township, to a dedication to a private property owner can be many, as many as 7 or 8 years. What happens after that, after the approval, is you have to have a contract developed on DOT's end. That has to go through all the departments. That contract has to go to the township, and that's reviewed and commented on. Then it goes back to the DOT, and again, it goes the same round. And then finally, you'll get to a point where you'll get a contract of sale that can come to presumably your council, that will require an adoption by ordinance, and then an acceptance of the property by ordinance. So all told, what has gone on up to date, which is fantastic for the town, is really the short end of the stick. You probably are looking at another year or two until the conveyance actually happens and title's transferred.
And you want to move ahead with your
We-
application? Yes.
Because we're the contract purchaser, we'd have a little bit of a problem.
Yes.
We couldn't move ahead, so.
Understood.
Yeah, I
Understood.
appreciate that. Should I just run through the rest of the comments in the email, Mr. Cucchiaro, or?
Yes, but just one question before you move past this. The testimony that we just heard, that was inclusive of the new location for the access drive that's not on the DOT property?
That's correct.
Oh, that's,
Okay.
yes, that's on the
Okay.
new access drive. The
All
one
right.
other thing I would just like to be clear, and it sounds like the board would be amenable to this, is that we're perfectly satisfied with the town moving forward, and I'm hopeful that you're going to obtain that property as soon as you can. But I wouldn't want that to be an impediment to us developing this site. And what I mean by that is the issuance of a zoning permit, the issuance of building permits.
Mr. Chair, I can address that. So if the applicant, and they have their reasons, they have adjusted the access, they've revised the plan so that that piece of property is not necessary or involved in any manner in their development. So it's not part of this application, it's a different lot, they're not proposing to use it, they are not proposing to acquire it in any manner. So the board, they're supportive of the town's efforts, but the board couldn't condition an approval
Right.
on something on that piece of property.
We understand that.
Okay.
The site plan as proposed right now eliminates the interaction with the DOT, and that
Yes.
you want to move ahead. So we respect that, and we understand that you don't want to comply with that aspect of relocating the drive. Perfectly clear.
Thank you. I believe the next comment we have from Mr. Herman, and this again is the June 6th email, is that he commented that we didn't propose to widen or improve any of the frontage of the property. And I think he also included in that from the March 28th email, drainage improvements and curbing improvements. And Brian, can you talk about why we haven't shown that on the plan currently?
Yes, I can. Again, Fairfax Road is two 10-foot lanes, one in the northbound direction and one in the southbound direction, with a 1-foot shoulder on each side. So the pavement width from center line to edge of pavement is 11 feet. And Mr. Herman's June 6th, and actually the prior one, March 28th, is requesting the applicant to widen Fairfax Road to provide a 12-foot lane where 10 exists, and an 8-foot shoulder where 1 foot exists, so a total pavement half-section of 20 feet. As we just discussed, the southern portion of the property is impeded by the DOT property, a slope access easement, and to the north, a ditch easement. With that 20-foot pavement width, would actually encroach into property we don't own, down to the south of our property frontage, and to the north, again, encroach into an easement which we are not allowed to enter based on the restrictions that are described in that easement. Going to our development plan, that easement to the north, ditch easement is right to the north of our driveway. We are proposing a 50-foot buffer here, so the widening would be a small little 30-foot section of widening, which doesn't really make any engineering sense in this area. From the proposed driveway down to the point where the DOT property begins is approximately 190 feet. We are not showing widening here, but if the board requires us to, we would widen that section.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
I mean, let's assume that the township is ultimately successful in acquiring that DOT piece of property, then, that frontage would be a lot larger than what you can currently, enlarge there, right?
That's correct.
So, I mean, is there any objection to, complying with number 2 to the extent that you can? And then, there may be future efforts when other properties acquired that can expand that?
If both easements and the DOT property was obtained by the township, or the easements were absolved and the township
Yeah.
obtained that property?
I mean, you wouldn't have to
The-
improve anything there. What I'm saying is, if you improved what you are permitted to improve right now,
Correct.
the township could work off of that later.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So restating, you are going to provide the widening along the portion of the frontage that isn't impacted by the DOT.
We haven't illustrated it, but if the board inclines us to do it, we could do it for this section from the southern part of our driveway to the beginning of the DOT.
Yeah.
approximately 190 feet. To the north, does not make any engineering sense to curve it in for 30 feet and curve it back out.
Well, so going back to, I mean, we're talking about a master plan, all right, that we want to, A, get curb in, all right, and B, widen the roads a little bit, all right? So I understand we're not going to do that all in one shot here, all right? But if you can put in, and then the town, when it acquires the property from the DOT,
Yeah.
can match that, that's what we're looking for. And I would like to continue that as far north as possible.
Mr. DeCina, because it actually took me a little bit to, when he was explaining it to me earlier, what you're suggesting is then the entire 190-foot frontage that we own, but I'm just going to call it the lip above the drainage, there would be a break for the drainage easement, and then a 30-foot, he's just saying it might not make sense.
The
Because
reason,
of the drainage easement.
Yeah,
the
that's-
reason my driveway's here is just to the north of it, we're not disturbing it, just to the north of it is that drainage easement.
Is that drainage
So
easement.
the curb would come out where it is today, wrap in for about 25, 30 feet, and then come back out.
Okay. Then can we take from the driveway south to the DOT?
Yes, we can.
And would there be any problem about putting curbing along the right-of-way line, along the DOT portion? So it's twofold. Like I said, we want to widen the pavement, but we want to also get curbing in.
So you're asking us to widen it to 20-foot pavement section, curb it,
Yeah.
and then,
And then swing the curb in along that small amount of frontage. And when the town owns the property, it'll take that portion of the curb out and meet the other widened alignment.
the only concern I have, once I do that, now what's happening, because right now Fairfield Road is pavement to grass edge. So any runoff on Fairfield Road pours into
umbrella?
grass. I curb that, now I'm channelizing the water runoff. I would need drainage. Up here, I can put an inlet in Fairfield Road on our widening part and come into my inlet to my basin. I have it down here, I cannot cross the DOT property. And I think everything drains to the south, so it would be buck and grade.
Ms. Newman, can you talk with Mr. Herman about this one?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Skidmore, I think you realize we're going to come back for another meeting, all right?
I'm guessing that's where we're going.
Yeah, all right. So Ms. Newman will speak with the town engineer, all right, and get back to you about what the resolution of this is,
Okay.
okay?
And
I understand, I understand what your concerns are.
Thank you.
Should we, I believe we have a little bit more time, or?
Yes, you do.
Okay. So there was a comment, Mr. DeCina, in both the March 28th email from Mr. Herman and the June 6th email from Mr. Herman dealing with tree limits in the backhoe training area. Can you, and I'm going to let you explain it because I wasn't really clear, to be frank, what he was referring to.
Mr. Herman's comment, as I mentioned earlier, to the south of our plan on our property is a fenced-in pipe installation / backhoe training area. Again, I don't want to get into too much detail because we'll talk about that later with the operations, but this area is basically what it says. It's a backhoe training area for their operators to learn how to use the backhoe for pipe installation. So there'll be digging going on. We show a fence, illustrate a fence that does come through the tree line, again, as part of our perimeter security fence. Mr. Herman was concerned that even though we're delineating a rectangle for this training area, part of it is to remain wooded, and he's concerned that once they get in there, they're going to clear it out. He was asking for a secondary fence, which we do illustrate on here, and you can see the note is kind of tucked in this green area. We're calling a tree protection fence, 4 foot high on there. We are showing it. If Mr. Herman wants something more detailed, we can certainly provide it, but again, the only intent is to use the grassed area that we're showing here.
I think that addresses it. You're fine.
Thank you. The last comment is the one I referenced at the beginning. It is in the email from today, and to be frank, I had 20 minutes to look at it before I arrived, but what Mr. Herman asks about is the possibility, and I'm reading, of the sanitary sewer being installed in this area in the future in 5 to 10 years. And the applicant should be required to connect to the sewer and potentially pay a fair share contribution should that sewer be built. My initial concerns are, this is an application for a facility with a septic approval. And this condition is so far out in the future, I don't know what the legal requirements are going to be at that time. Of course, if we were to tie into a sewer, we would be responsible pursuant to the local ordinance to participate in contribution. What I felt was uncomfortable about, in addition to the 5 to 10 years, was the requirement to tie into the sewer line at some future date that we don't know about, when we have an application for septic before the board, and which we'd like to hopefully have approved. That was my concern. So what I would suggest is that if we will comply whatever the law requires us to do at the time. To me, this condition is it's so nebulous and so far into the future that it may not be a valid one, not to mention the issue with requiring a sewer tie-in when we have a septic approval that will be in operation at that time. The reality is, my client might want to be, they probably would want to be on the sewer. Given that I just received this so recently, and the nebulous nature of it, I have concerns, and I'd like, if the board's so inclined to oppose any condition as regards to sewer, I would like it to be that the applicant will comply with the legal requirements as it relates to any sewer tie-in, including any contributions that might be required.
So would you like, since we're coming back, all right, would you like to discuss this directly with Mr. Herman?
If I could, though, Mr. Chairman, in fairness to this applicant, to say that there may be sewer in this area in 5 to 10 years, it just bears the question. I think what the applicant has agreed to is completely fair. If, in fact, 5 to 10 years from now, sewer is extended, they would comply with what's required under the law. I mean, certainly if sewer is within a certain proximity to your property, currently you're legally obligated to connect. So, but I don't think first of all, I think it should go to the town's utility department for their review and approval, which would have to under preliminary, regardless of whether it's a septic or water. And then I think what they've offered is completely fair, but to continue to explore something that there's no imminent plan for, I'm hard pressed to understand what I would be exploring.
There's a legal issue associated with this as well. I sort of was in the background on this, but I feel I need to say it now. So this is a permitted use. It doesn't require any variance relief. It requires some design waiver relief. When we're reviewing an application for a permitted use at the planning board, when you're making conditions, they have to be related to requirements that we have in our ordinance or requirements that are in statutes or administrative regulations. That's how we get to the conditions on like stormwater management and road widths and things like that. If you can't find an ordinance or a statute or an administrative regulation for a permitted, when you're looking at a permitted use that would require this, you're sort of at the limits of what a planning board can really require, in an instance like this. I wanted to see what was, offered, because I certainly didn't want to obstruct anything. But in terms of imposing a condition like that, we're in a difficult place based upon the jurisdiction that we have. We can certainly discuss it a little bit more, all the relevant parties, so we have a better feel and understanding for it. As Ms. Skidmore said, she hasn't had a real opportunity to think about it in depth. But
I didn't see that until the meeting
Okay.
I just sat down.
But, that's sort of the statutory framework that we have to look at it in. But, we'll certainly take another more in-depth dive, between now and the next time.
But we understand that the application in front of the board right now is for a septic field, and that's what we'll be reviewing.
Mhm.
Okay?
Thank you. We could go through the board planner or board engineer letters, but Mr. DeCina, do we have any issues with any of the comments that were generated, the most recent review letters, I think, May 30th and May 31st?
Yeah, basically, if you can stipulate that you will comply with all the technical recommendations.
We certainly will.
Certainly can.
Okay. Yeah, we don't need to go through them
That's
all
fine.
individually.
That makes it nice and easy. Okay. We done with Mr. DeCina?
I just have a few other items, just to put them in the record. Mr. DeCina, we did get a review memo from the Shade Tree Commission,
That is correct.
and were there any comments in there?
There were none.
Okay.
No comments.
I can go through the other few, I don't know if the board's had an opportunity. We did get a review member from the Fire Bureau. We have spoken, Mr. DeCina, do you want to share that information?
Yes, I spoke to Chief Lewis regarding his review letter. An updated one came through a couple weeks ago. And again, the comments that were on his original letter were discussed, and we can certainly comply, and he was completely satisfied with our design in terms of site access and circulation for the project.
We also met with the Environmental Commission. Mr. Huzar was present at that meeting, and I believe the renewed comment memo was issued that indicated we answered all their questions.
Was the Phase 2 done yet? That was the one pending?
Not yet.
Okay,
It will be done.
okay.
I don't have any more questions for Mr. DeCina, and the board doesn't.
The one
Board
thing I-
have any questions?
What, can you just describe a little bit about the fire pit?
One,
We do have someone who's going to address that in operations.
It's more of like a constructional, like the structure itself, like how is it constructed?
flush to the ground, it's stone,
Concrete base?
stone around.
I'm just concerned of a fire pit with a well and that's going to be potable water for the facility. Anything that seeps down will eventually get into the well.
I think you'll hear better answers from the operations, not the...
Okay.
The one thing I didn't touch on our plan is an emergency backup generator is proposed adjacent to the building. We do have a cut sheet here in terms of noise. It's 66 decibels at 23 feet, but when you project it out to the property line, we are below standards. That's during testing, and testing will be done during the day. It's at 47 decibels at the property line, so it doesn't...
You're also in the middle of it, you're on an SED zone, so I'm not terribly concerned
I just wanted to
about
put it
that.
on record, thank you.
Yeah. So is it, that's it?
Yeah, wait.
Yeah. Gentlemen, anything there?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple questions, unless the board members have any further questions. I just have a couple quick questions.
No, go right ahead, Peter.
All right, thank you. I just want to get a better understanding of the driver training area and oversized vehicle parking, just a sense of, with it being grass pavers, how big the vehicles will be, where they'd be parking, if there's enough room for operations when they're parked.
I think Mr. Fitzpatrick from New Jersey Natural Gas will respond to that.
Okay. And then,
Ms. Skidmore, if you could just move a little closer to the mic when you're talking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I never really have that complaint, I'll be honest. Typically, people tell me I'm too loud.
and then one other question for now. The backhoe training area, that equipment, is that going to be stored on-site or off-site? In terms of the like any type of machine?
Backhoe machine will be on-site.
Okay. As far as the servicing of that equipment goes, would that be done on-site or off-site? Like anything that may be needed mechanically?
Servicing will be taken off-site.
I'm pretty sure that'll be off-site, but again,
Yeah, there's
I hate just, off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure that's going to be serviced off-site.
But that would be the other witness as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody? All right, I would like to just open it to the public so that we finish up Mr. DeCina. Okay? Anyone from the public would like to come up and ask questions of this witness? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion of it. Okay, it's 9:30, all right? Told you weren't going to get through.
Well, I could have.
Where can we put them, Eileen?
Mr. Chair, the 20th, is now packed again. And it includes, Monmouth Commercial. We do have available July 18th that has, the public hearing for the master plan and Gil Petroleum. I think that's the date I would recommend, and that we do it right after the master plan hearing,
Before Gil,
before Gil.
yes. July 18th.
Well, let's just see if they're available.
I am going to have to pursue that. I mean, will there be any more questions for Mr. DeCina?
I think we've closed it out, right, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, we did.
Although, there are some issues we're going to be discussing between now and the next
Yeah.
meeting.
If it's not an imposition, I would like for him to come back.
Okay. Okay, July 18th,
All right, so let me that's okay?
I'm looking behind to
Okay.
make sure everybody else is okay. We're good with July 18th. Can I ask you a question, though? Will the hearing be the same in terms of time restrictions?
No. Our agenda is not going to be as heavy, and what we're going to do is we have it'll be you and another application. We're going to do our master plan because I have to get that through, and then I'm going to put you on, all right? And I'll let you go, try to get you finished up on that meeting,
Okay,
okay?
okay.
This was an atypical night for the board and its scheduling.
So for clarification, the master plan is going first?
The master plan's going to go first.
So it's not like the applicant has to be here for 7 o'clock
Correct.
on the dot, just so you know.
Okay.
How long do we anticipate the master plan?
Peter? About how long do you figure the master plan presentation's going to go?
We were just discussing that. I would say, assuming that there's again, it's a housing plan element and fair share plan, so it's a little bit unpredictable. Assuming that there's no objectors or anything like that, about maybe a 10 to 15-minute presentation and some Q&A.
I'm sorry, so the only master plan issue we're dealing with that night is the fair share plan?
That's my understanding.
Okay,
Right. That's what we agreed upon, right?
okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I would need also an extension of time on the record.
Pardon me?
I would also need an extension of time from you on the record
We are happy to provide that
through the end of July.
through the 19th of July.
Thank you.
All right, then, so...
Wait, hold on. When's our next meeting after July?
August, hold on one second.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I just dropped it, hold on. I think it's August 2nd.
Yeah,
All I would ask is,
August 1st.
can you just give us to August 2nd as the extension, just in case there's some issue on the 18th?
Yes, I would just make a very respectful request that we please try and go forward on the 18th, because I
Yeah.
think, as you all know,
But if I don't
August,
have-
everyone goes away.
If I don't have a quorum, okay?
Yeah.
I don't want to be stuck with an approval.
Yeah,
ma-
absolutely, absolutely. So August the 2nd.
I would strongly recommend we find 5 people to show up on that night, because if we don't adopt a fair share plan,
You're in trouble.
it is not going to be a nice experience for this
Oh, yes.
municipality.
Okay, all right, but we're good. Okay. So can you make the announcement? please?
Okay. So the application of New Jersey Natural Gas Company, case number SP 1058, be carried to the board's July 18th, 2019 meeting, beginning 7 o'clock here at Town Hall. There'll be no further notice to property owners. If you received a notice, you will not receive another one. Anyone who is interested can come during normal business hours and review the plans and other documents in the office of the Planning Board Secretary.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Board Member.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and I'm going to hold it to a 5-minute break.
The planning board will now reconvene.
We're going to do 2 applications tonight. We're going to get them done, all right?
You want another roll call?
Yes, please.
Mr. Boyle was excused. Mr. Dorado?
Here.
Mr. Husser?
Here.
Chief Kudrick was excused. Mr. Nacastro?
Here.
Mr. Schneider, I believe, left. Mr. Tannenhouse was excused. Mr. Seaman?
Here.
Mr. Everett?
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Here.
And Chairman Nash?
Present.
You still have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're back on record now. We're now going to do application number SP 1055, I'm sorry, SP 1061, New Jersey American Water Company. It's a minor site plan application of New Jersey American Water Company, Inc., as applicant and owner seeking minor site plan approval to construct a 192-square-foot, one-story building addition along the east side of the building and install a new well structure and pad along the east side of the proposed building addition, along with landscaping, building-mounted lighting, improvements, relocation of the westerly fence line to the side property line, replacement of the existing access swing gate with a proposed sliding gate, and minor exterior building renovations for the existing well station building on the premises known as Block 65, Lot 34, 42 Spruce Road.
Good evening,
Counsel.
Mr. Chairman. Neil O'Brien from the law firm of Archer and Griner for the applicant, New Jersey American Water Company. Public water utility, of course, in Howell Township and lots of other municipalities throughout its regional service area. Again, this is an application for upgrades to a public utility well station, which already serves portions of the township. In terms of development, we believe that it's fairly straightforward. There are some existing non-conforming conditions on the property which we'll address as part of our application. One is for a non-conforming minimum lot size of 13,917 square feet when 15,000 square feet is required. Another is for an existing minimum front yard setback of 41.0 feet where 50 feet is required, but in this case, we're adding to the building along that same setback line, so we're requesting a variance. We also have non-conforming setbacks from the existing accessory water tank on the property, and they also have an existing non-conforming height of 68 feet for that water tank, which of course exceeds the maximum height of 30 feet. We're asking the board to affirm or ratify, if you will, the existing non-conforming conditions and grant a variance for the front yard setback because, again, we are extending the building along that front yard setback line. I have with me this evening Richard Algio from American Water. If I could, I'll have him sworn and have him introduce himself to you and tell you his qualifications.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name.
My name is Richard Algio. The last name is A-L-G-E-O. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey since 1989. You want my office location?
Whatever you would like to place on the record in
American
terms of your
Water
qualifications.
At 1 Water Street in Camden, New Jersey.
So, Rick, you work for the water company, or at least the parent of the water company, so you are very well versed in the design of facilities like this.
Before you go there, Counselor, all right, I just want to verify, your license is current with the State Board,
Yes, it is, sir.
and there are any pending applications,
None.
actions? All right, we'll accept Mr. Algard as a expert in civil engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the exhibit you're looking at right now is a rendered version of our site plan, which was sheet C2 from the site plan set that we submitted, but which we've just taken and rendered. And I think that is part of A5, or would you like to number it differently, Council? Again,
We
it's
have,
a
well,
rendered version of C2.
if it's a color rendering, then we need to mark it, and that would be...
A6?
I have the wrong one. A6.
Yeah, thank you. So, looking at A6, Mr. Algio, could you describe the existing conditions on the property and around the property for the board?
Okay. The property itself is an undersized lot, as Mr. O'Brien had said. It is 13,917 square feet, when the ordinance requires 15,000, so it's slightly undersized. It's an existing condition.
You just need to hold the mic a little closer. Or you could sit down and get close to the one on the table.
There you go. All right. The blue circle at the top of the rendering is the existing water storage tank. That is a 600,000-gallon tank. It's situated approximately 15 feet from the rear property line and 25 feet from the westerly property line and 35 feet from the easterly property line and approximately, I think, 84 feet from the front lot line. The brown rectangle in the lower right side of the rendering is the building. It currently shows the existing footprint plus the addition that we're proposing to construct. The 2/3 of the building on the left is the existing building, and the portion, the 1/3 on the right, is the proposed addition.
So what's the size of the existing building and what's the size of the addition?
Okay, the existing building is 24 feet long and 16 feet wide. It's approximately 10 foot to the midline of the roof high. The addition is 12 feet long and 16 feet wide with the same one-story construction.
So this is a very minor addition to a already small building.
Yes, it is. It's a 192 square foot addition.
Where is the well on this property? And we're putting in an additional well, correct?
Right. The existing well is located within the existing well station building. Okay, basically where the cursor is right now. The proposed well, actually, it's recently been installed. The well was drilled and constructed. It's well 13. That's that blue circle between the storage tank and the well station building.
So in terms of the operation of the site, obviously the wells reduce the water from the ground. The water is treated within the existing treatment building and will be treated within the building expansion and then stored in the water tank. Why does the water tank have to be so large?
Well, it serves multiple purposes. From a water quality standpoint, it's used for disinfection. The water's retained in there with the chlorine, and it kills any microorganisms that might be in the water coming out of the ground. But mainly, it serves as storage for firefighting purposes. This is a booster station that supplements other wells and storage tanks that we have within Howell. But this site only has the one well right now. And it's an essential facility for firefighting and meeting peak demands. So that's the reason why we're constructing this second well. Is they'll never operate concurrently. It's one or the other will be in operation. But if you need to maintain the existing well that's operating, then you have a backup to go to. The proposed well is going to become the primary well, and the existing one's going to be the backup to it.
So this property is an important or an essential portion of New Jersey American Water's water distribution system.
Absolutely. In the summer months, this is essential. We can't meet peak demands without this facility. So that's why it's a critical project to construct this well. And the reason we're expanding the building, when the piping comes in, there's a lot of metering equipment, valves and whatnot that won't fit in the existing building. The existing facility has electrical equipment, control panels, booster pumps. All the wall space, except for the doors, is occupied with equipment, analyzers and that kind of thing. It's highly automated. It's an unmanned facility. We do have an operator attend the facility once per day for an hour to 2 hours during normal business hours, not at night. They come from Oakland and they come over and work on it for an hour and go back.
So in terms of just relating back to the non-conforming front yard setback of 41.04 feet where 50 is required, we're extending the building, as the board can now see, just straight across the front, the existing frontage. So we're not increasing that front yard setback, we're keeping it the same, but we're putting more building in there, so technically that is a variance. Again, if you could just repeat, what are the reasons for that? Why can't we bump the new part of the building back?
Okay. Like I said, the wall space is completely occupied. At present, there's chemical feed equipment and storage, two small storage tanks located, when I say small, 165 gallons each, one for hypochlorite and one for corrosion inhibitor. They're located in the building, let's see, I'll show you on this one back here. They're located in the existing building right here in the center. Everything else is control panels and electrical equipment that it can't be moved without, major renovation to the facility and significant downtime. So to maintain operations, which is what we're going to do during the construction of this facility if it's approved, we had to select the only wall space that was going to be available for the expansion, which, like I said, the existing chemical containment is very small. It's right here. That's going to be moved into the addition, along with the new piping for the proposed well. And that, because it's basically in the center of the building, that's why we couldn't jog the addition back further, because you wouldn't be able to get to it. We need it for access into this new room. In the new room, there's also, the reason we're moving the chemicals in there is because the existing containment is very tight, and it makes maintenance of the weight scale that is under the tanks, that's how we determine how much we're feeding every day, very difficult, and it's not safe for the operators. Additionally, the containment that we're proposing in the new room is going to be only 1 foot deep. It's 6 foot by 6 foot depressed slab for each chemical. They're going to be separate. So it makes maintenance of the equipment that's under the tanks much easier. It's providing more containment. So that's part of the reason why the building's being it.
So to sum up, you're saying that the existing non-conforming front yard setback has to be maintained because this is a critical facility and cannot be shut down to accommodate this relocation that would be necessary if
Exactly.
you were to put it in conformance.
Yes. And
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we'd offer that certainly promotes the public good, which should satisfy the positive criteria for a C2 variance. Is that front yard setback consistent with other buildings?
Yeah, the development along Spruce Road was constructed 50 years ago, 60 years ago, I think. And the zoning at that point in time was 30 feet. I wrote this, our existing facility is equal to or better than most of the setbacks for the houses that are on that street. It's definitely not worse than any of them.
And the building you've already said is quite small.
Right, it's basically the size of a two-car garage at best.
What are we doing out here in terms of landscaping, and what's the existing situation?
Okay, if you zoom out a little bit, you can see it better. The light green trees are existing trees that are within the fence line, okay? And on the westerly side, the left side of that rendering, that entire lot it's owned by the township, and it's heavily wooded with deciduous trees, mainly. So the light green are existing. The dark green trees are what we're proposing. They're all generally evergreens. There's a few deciduous shrubs in the front of the building up at foundation plantings. But most of them are evergreen, and we're also, in conjunction with discussions with the board professionals, going to add a white oak street tree in the planted bed that's up in the front near the Norway spruces.
There is also an ordinance requirement for a 10-foot buffer from residences. We don't currently meet that in certain areas that the board can notice, I'm sure, from the rendering, but we're going to provide additional landscaping in consultation with the board professionals, correct?
Yes, we are.
Talk about site lighting, please.
Okay, right now they're wall pack lights. They're only operated by switch from the inside. There's no ongoing, exterior lighting.
No pole-mounted lighting.
No pole-mounted lighting, no area lighting at all. So we are proposing, for security reasons, we're improving security at this facility as part of this project, to add one wall pack light, a sconce, on each face of the building. They are fully cut-off lights, so there will be no light trespass onto other properties. in our consultation with the board professionals, we discussed it was the light that's on the east end closest to that neighboring residence. We had it mounted at 8 feet. We're going to lower that to a 6-foot mounting height and change the lamp intensity so that there's no trespass light going off into that neighbor's yard. Plus, with the proposed evergreen trees that are just to the east of the addition, those 2 holly trees right there, that will further screen the light from the neighboring property.
These are motion censored lights, correct?
Yes, they are. So they will normally be off at all times. The only time that they will come on is if there was an intruder to get inside the fence and get within 7 to 10 feet of the building facade.
Or it's a windy day and the bushes are moving.
No, Mr. Chairman, in fact, that's not. I was actually pretty impressed by, when we had our technical meeting, the applicant has pretty specific specifications, and maybe you could discuss the weight that has to incur.
Sure. The technology we're using is dual technology. It uses infrared radar and a microwave technology, and there's 2 of each of those sensors in each motion detector. And the reason for that is because it will not detect, like if a dog came in there, if it's under 77 pounds, it won't turn those lights on. If it's a deer jumped the fence and got in there, it would turn it on. But the way the lights will operate is they will come on for 5 minutes at full intensity once motion's detected, and then they ramp down for 5 minutes. Once there's no more motion detected, they'll ramp down for 5 minutes and be off after 10 minutes of coming on, after the motion's last sense. So our operators go there during the day. The only time they're there at night is in an emergency, which if they drive up to it and get within 7 to 10 feet of the sensor, the lights will come on.
So for all of those reasons, we will not meet the 0.3-foot candle minimum requirement in property lines because basically the lights aren't on, so we are asking for a waiver from that requirement.
Yes, we are.
Can I just, Sherry, you are okay with the landscaping on the east side?
Yeah, like he had mentioned, we did meet the other day, and so they're going to add a few more trees further up by that tank. The plans that you're seeing there, they've been altered a little bit. Like you said, he added white oak. We switched some of the species. So yeah, they're working with me to make sure it's fixed.
And it's going to effectively screen it from the adjacent residence?
Right, and so the trees that you see in the lighter color, they're, larger oaks. So, there's already something there. So yeah, these will add to that.
Okay,
But
thank you.
the existing oak trees, most of them are oak. There's 2 red cedars in there that are about 25 feet tall. But the oaks are generally from 25 to 50 feet tall, mature, fairly mature trees. They provide good screening during the summertime, but in the winter less. So we're going to supplement that.
We're also asking for a waiver from placing sidewalk along the frontage of this site. Why are we asking for that?
Well, this site is at the terminus, the northwest terminus of Spruce Road. It's a dead end right at our driveway there. So there's no existing sidewalks on Spruce at all, anywhere, all the way out to Aldrich Road. There's none. There's really no reason for us to, for a sidewalk for our purposes, because we got one guy there for an hour and he's in the facility and gone. For the neighbors, there's really no reason for them to head towards to the west, because it's just a dead end in woodland.
Right, it's
So-
not compatible with the neighborhood.
Yeah,
Exactly. We talked about the fact that the station's unmanned. We're not proposing a trash receptacle, right? How do we handle trash?
right. So right now it's unmanned. Same with the operation's going to be identical in the future as it is today. We don't generate trash because we don't have consumable products other than the liquid chemicals that are being injected into the water supply. So we don't generate waste. If they have equipment that comes in shipping containers or packages, they take it with them and take it back to Oak Glen facility where they have the trash receptacles.
And Oak Glen, for the board members, well, they probably are. It's a major water treatment facility right here also in Howell Township. We were actually here about a year ago before you for the same facility. In terms of the facility being unmanned, you talked about liquid chemicals. What kind of traffic?
Okay, so, like I said, the storage containers are 165 gallons, very small. We don't use a lot of chemical here. But once every 3 months, we need, hang on, I'll put my glass on, I don't misspeak. Okay, the hypochlorite deliveries are, let's see, once every 6 weeks. Okay, so they come in a tanker truck, even though we only need 165 gallons. They hit all our facilities with one shipment, so they'll come pull a tanker truck, they're small, 1,800-gallon tanker trucks, and they will park in the asphalt driveway. They run a hose into the building and pump it directly into the storage tank. So that's once every 6 weeks. The corrosion inhibitor, we even use less of that. That comes in 55-gallon drums, 2 typically are delivered at a time on a liftgate truck, utility truck, and that's once every 3 months. So very little truck traffic coming in. The main traffic is that once per day operator visit, and then we have generally about once a week landscape maintenance.
And obviously no public access. There's no office in here. There's no reason for anybody else to visit this site.
Exactly. It's a fenced, secured facility. We don't want public.
Any impacts in terms of noise, vibration, glare?
No, typically your noise comes from pumping equipment, and the well pumps are 400, 350 feet in the ground. They're silent. You won't hear it, and you won't even know if you're standing there if they're on. The booster pumps, when they come on, you can hear them inside the facility, but outside the facility, it's very quiet. That will not change. We're not proposing there will be zero increase in the noise level. So what's there today is what's you're going to observe in the future.
Again, in terms of our existing conditions and our variance, we would offer the board that Mr. Algio's testified that there will be no impacts to surrounding properties, that the front yard setback is consistent with or better than the existing front yard setbacks, and we would offer that would satisfy the negative criteria for a C2 variance. We are a conditional use here, Mr. Algio. There are 4 conditional use standards. Existing lot coverage of 22.15%, which will be increased to 23.7. The maximum is 25, and that is a conditional use standard. So we meet that standard?
Yes, we do.
The structures we're landscaping to protect from adjoining residences. Do we meet that standard?
Yes, we do. We're adding the proposed landscaping to supplement the existing that's there, and it will significantly improve the screening of the facility.
As a pumping station, this facility is required to be compatible with residential properties in the area. And if I could ask Ms. Newman to show the elevation that we submitted, we can show you that we're complying with that standard also. Thank you. So again, this building obviously is a utility form building, but we're describe to the board what we're doing here to make it just look a little bit more like a residence.
Okay. Presently, it's just concrete block, painted concrete block. It doesn't have any windows. The existing building is from the gray electrical cabinets that are on the front to pretty much the middle of where those 2 faux windows are. So we're going to make it look like, to improve the look, we're going to add residential siding, hardy board siding, and trim. We're going to replace the existing roof with high-def shingles, architectural grade shingles. The doors, there's a single door on the front and double doors on the back. They're both steel right now. They're going to be replaced with fiberglass doors. We're adding the 2 faux windows that are 6-pane windows. They're not real windows.
So there'll be no access.
Because, and add those vinyl shutters.
So we're significantly upgrading the existing building and also providing these features, obviously, for the addition.
Right.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I think the applicant has done a decent job of explaining why. They've shown us how it looks. If I could just kind of take us back to the report, because I think they've addressed a lot of the issues, and I know we do still have another application. As I hop through, I believe all the relief has been testified to. On page 4, I believe they have addressed that they have been compliant with any prior conditions. They've addressed the operations. They've spoken about the landscaping. They've talked about the lighting. Because this is a minor site plan, an environmental impact report wasn't required under our checklist. And because the site is existing development, we would take no exception to them not providing one. As it relates to the stormwater management of the site, it is a minor development. It doesn't meet the prong to be a major development. And we did speak about this regrading issue, and I know the applicant's engineer will be able to provide as best as they can, but it is off-site, and they're going to grade to it as best as they can to get to the grate. And then they've addressed the concrete washout area is something, although you haven't spoken about. Again, I was impressed that at the technical meeting, this is actually provided for construction purposes, so that they don't have vehicles trucking mud in and out of the site. So it's to provide an area where they will wash out the trucks and then get off of the site. So I actually think it's a nice thing that we don't often see applicants doing, other than Freehold Soils maybe telling them so. And as it relates to improvements, we've heard the testimony as to why they believe sidewalk is not warranted in this area. I would concur with the testimony as provided, and I don't believe, because Spruce is a local roadway, that we need any improvements out there. Having said that, we have some minor technical items contained in item 5. Mr. Algeo, do you agree to comply with those?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, I know I did a quick kind of summary for that, but I think that takes them through the report.
It's all your testimony?
That's our affirmative testimony, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Does the board have any questions? Okay. Seeing none? Anyone in the public wish to come up and ask questions of this applicant? Okay, no public left. All right, I'll close the public session. Any closing comments you'd like to make?
No, I think we've addressed the positive and negative criteria because they are more engineering related than planning related. We didn't bring a planner with us. I would welcome your board planner's comments if, to the extent he has any. We addressed the conditional use standards. I believe we've met the criteria for minor site plan approval. And again, I just repeat the request that if the board's disposed to grant or approve our application, that council could include an acknowledgement or ratification of the existing non-conforming conditions. Just because we are changing the site, we haven't been before you for site plan approval for this facility before. Township used to actually own this facility as part of a municipal utility, so it would be nice to have those as a baseline in any resolution of approval that's provided in connection with the application.
But that's what you asked for, so if there's an approval, it includes that.
Thank you.
Okay, hearing that, do I have a motion from the board?
I'll make a motion for a minor site plan approval for case number SP 1061.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you.
Mr. Dorado?
Yes.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Chairman Nash?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. See, we actually do approve applications.
When they make buildings prettier, it's always easy.
Fake house, that's pretty good.
Next time I pay my water bill, I'll feel maybe not, because the rates
I'm sure it's here somewhere.
Yeah, the anti-corrosives don't work on the human body. Maybe put some probiotics.
Okay, we're going to hear now case number SP 1055, 1228 Realty LLC. It's a minor site plan, application of 1228 Realty LLC as applicants and owners seeking minor site plan approval to construct a two-story building addition of approximately 780 square feet, totaling along the total along the north side of the existing one-story portion of the building and an approximately 1,206 square foot second-story addition above the existing one-story portion of the building. Additional interior building renovations, additional parking, and configuration of the existing on-site parking lot areas on premises known as Block 137, Lot 29, 1228 U.S. Highway 9 South. Counselor.
Good evening, board members. My name is Carlton Cromer. I'm the attorney for the applicant. Basically, the short request is that we're looking to renovate an office building on Route 9. The prior use was an office use. We are looking to continue to use the building as an office, but we're just looking to renovate it. So we are applying to the board for minor site plan approval. There are two professionals who are going to testify in support of the application. One is an architect. His name is Michael Monroe. He's going to testify to the architectural aspects of the application. The other professional is Jacqueline Floor. She is an engineer and a planner. She's going to testify to the engineering and planning aspects of the application. So without further ado, I'd like to begin calling my first witness, who is Michael Moore. He's the architect again. He's going to give a general overview of the proposed design that we're looking to implement, and following that, the engineer.
Hey, Mr. Moore, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please get close to the mic and state and spell your name.
It's Michael James Monroe, M-O-N-R-O-E.
I'm sorry, I got your name wrong. Okay.
12 Broad Street in Red Bank. And I'm licensed in the state of New Jersey. My license is current. I have no appeals against my pending right now. I've been licensed for 30 years. I've appeared before this board, I think, once or twice. I've probably been before boards about 300-400 times in 30 years. Past president, Jersey Shore AIA, and current chairman of the Red Bank Construction Board of Appeals.
All right, we'll accept his qualifications as a professional in architecture.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore, have you prepared any plans in connection with this application?
Yes, I have.
Okay, can you tell us about those, please?
We have a set of plans. I have a copy here. You have them before you. It's a set of 5 plans, 5 sheets. And on the cover sheet that you have there, basically this shows you the existing condition of the building. I also have on a handout for you.
Where is this building located on 9? What's the closest cross street?
Which is south of Casino, I think.
It's right next to the bowling alley?
Bowling alley.
Okay, so we're going to mark as
A6.
A6. Counsel, what should we describe A6 as?
Pictures for the present condition of the property.
This is existing conditions. I took these pictures, 9 of these pictures this morning, so it's the conditions as of today, and there's a Google Earth picture on this one handout.
We'll call this an existing conditions photo exhibit. All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, to answer your question, it's across the street from Automedic, down the street from Joe's Army Navy store.
It's on the southbound side or the northbound side of 9?
South.
South. So it's between the bowling alley and the Army Navy store?
Basically.
Yeah.
South of Public Storage.
South?
Casino Drive and Home Depot.
Yeah, on the south side.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I just want to give you a brief overview from an architectural point of view first, before we get into the engineering. This building's basically 21,000 square feet and change, and we're taking it about 6,000 square feet greater. We first looked at this building What you see here is on our cover sheet, in the existing condition, we're on the southbound side, but this is from the northbound lane. As you see the existing and proposed view of the building. It has kind of a low one-story portion to the building in front of it, and some of our earlier designs had a sloping roof. And we like what we came up with, making it a more articulated corner. You're moving by at a fairly fast rate of speed on the road, and we wanted to accentuate the building's entrances, which were really not identified with the existing architecture. Of that 6,000, so basically this building's a two-story building. The back one-third of it, it was a two-story high warehouse. Instead of just infilling all that space, the warehouse is not permitted, we're just doing office space. Just as an overview, we're infilling the back in, we're making an open atrium, we're putting in skylights. So 3,000 square feet of our addition is going towards architectural features for the building, which we think it never had but needed. The tower to the right-hand side, on the bottom picture, the right-hand tower, that's the front entrance. The corner tower identifies the corner, and the back left tower is where our elevator lobby is, and they're all interconnected. The building has been demoed inside. It was a real mess. The building suffered from a lot of deferred maintenance. It's been a terrible state of disrepair. Our clients are invested in doing the right thing for the building. We're looking for a more upper-end clientele, a really nice caliber of client coming in here. We're going to spend money on the building to do that and on the property. We're looking for larger tenants. We have our existing sign probably showed 40 people that were in this building with very small lettering. It's the world's worst sign. You couldn't read it if you wanted to. But we're going to look for larger tenants, but we're going to basically build to suit for this building, whatever the market. We have a proportion of medical and office space, which we have in our calculation, and we're going to stick to that ratio, but we're going to build to suit what the market is looking for, which is medical-related office, could be any sort of support groups for medical, could be insurance, could be things like that, physical therapy, any combination. There always was a mix in this building, and there will be most likely the same demand. So I just wanted to put the overall, what we're doing in perspective. The only new footprint for the building is on the right-hand tower is a two-story high lobby. It's 400 square feet, just to make, the existing vestibule was 4 feet. It didn't even meet ADA requirements. It was just terrible. So this gets us an ADA access coming in, some nice building features, and we can have, a fully compliant, up-to-date, modern building, which we think will be an asset to the streetscape, as opposed to what was there. The plans just show sample layouts. They can be whatever it is, but basically we have a 4,000, a 3,000, 4,000, a 2,000, a 1,500 square foot sample space, but it doesn't really matter. We're going to build to suit. And that's basically an overview of what we're doing in the project. Like I said, we have a lot of nice architectural features. Inside the building also, common area atriums and things like that. And that takes about 3,000 square feet of space, not including bathrooms and normal corridors, which would be. So when we talk about parking and things like that later, I just want you to be aware of how we're using some of that space that we're adding. And the only real building addition is to improve the corner condition aesthetically, and also to add an entry vestibule. Otherwise, we're over existing construction with everything. And that's basically all I had for an overview architecturally before we start the engineering portion.
Well, if I could, we have architectural standards that this building deviates from.
Okay.
So while you are making improvements, you are seeking design waivers for the roofline offsets, and we have a requirement that developments with facades over 50 feet in length shall incorporate wall projections or recesses a minimum of 3 feet in depth over at least 10% of the facade.
Yes, so the one place we have there's an existing longer wall in this area, the rendering. We actually broke that up on the architectural plans on the last page. On the elevation, we have a series of 5 windows, which are a lot of smaller windows combined in them. And those articulations are about 2 feet deep. So it's not the 3 feet that you're looking for, but it's not without articulation. It's not just a flat plane of glass. We went through great lengths to keep some of the rhythm and make it not quite as busy, but also appreciate your ordinance and the value of it. But there is some articulation of those windows. They're set in, and we'll get some nice shadow lines there on on the south side of the building.
Is there any reason why you can't go the additional foot and comply with the ordinance?
It's an existing wall condition, they're thick walls, but I can artificially pack it out, and I can only bring the walls in, so my wall is only so thick. So I can make the wall thicker as an architectural feature. I don't know if I can get to the full 3 feet in that area, or I can break up part of it and I can add it.
Sure. We put Walmart through hell about the 3 foot, okay? So put it in perspective. We would like to see the 3 foot.
We'll comply with your ordinance of 3 foot relief within the 75, within 50 feet.
Thank you.
That's not a problem.
Laura, any other comments?
Do you want to address the roof line offset?
Yeah, the back of the building is existing. We have a cornice line, just a trim at the roof that goes around the whole building. There's some relief sought. The height of the building is below what's allowed towards the front. As we get towards the back, there's a height of the building in relationship to the rear setback, I believe. We're not changing that except for the parapet. There's nothing back there. It's an existing condition. I can't change it. It's existing roof structure. It's on the rear elevation in the middle there. We're dressing it up a little bit, and it really just looks out on a retention basin for the adjoining property. There's no one that ever sees that area, and I don't think there's any impact. The property line's an artificial line there. It's the retention basin. It's all open. It's an open grass area behind there, so you can't tell the property stops right behind the building. So I don't think we're asking for a waiver for it. I don't think it's an architectural detriment.
But you don't own the lot back there.
There's nothing I can't, no, I don't own the lot back there, no. But it's an existing detention basin.
So potentially someone could build on that lot.
Yes, they could. They'd have to put the detention basin somewhere else, but yes. I can leave the parapet off the back, but it's an existing building on the back, an existing property line, and an existing offset. So I was trying to spend money on the parapet, but the parapet being exempt, I believe, the roof height is existing. So I think it's a technical variance in nature. I'm not trying to...
This isn't a variance, it's a waiver for the
Technical
roof line offsets provided in your on your building. It has nothing to do with your setback, just so we're clear.
So how much is the deviation?
There's no offsets along the north and south facades on the roof line.
And what's the ordinance require?
It requires roof line offsets measuring no longer than 75 feet in length.
So we'll comply with that. I'll add a vertical offset as well. I can add that in the parapet, and it'll look nice and not an issue.
Okay, fine. So we eliminated 2
Yes.
waivers. Okay.
Thank you.
Is that the extent of his testimony?
Yes.
Board have any questions? Are you here for this application?
Yes.
No. Okay.
He's the owner.
Is is he a public person, or is he one of
He's
your...
involved in the application.
He's part of the applicant?
He's not going to testify, though.
Okay. Do I have to open it technically?
Yes.
Okay, so if
Everyone
there's
go
anyone
out
in the
to that
public
door.
who would like to ask questions of this witness, please step forward. Seeing none, let's move to your engineer.
Thank you. Ms. Floor, could you give us some background
Well,
information?
let me just swear you in first. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Jacqueline, Jaclyn, Flor, Flor.
Okay, you can qualify her.
All right. Mr. Chairman, my name is Jacqueline Flor. I'm the president and CEO of Ingenuity Infrastructure. I've been practicing engineering for 20 years. I graduated in 1999 from Florida Tech in Melbourne, Florida. 2004, I had my PE license. 2005, CME. 2006, PP license. I'm a professional planner, professional engineer, and a certified municipal engineer in New Jersey. My license is current. I have nothing pending against it.
Okay, we will accept, so you want to qualify both as civil engineer and a professional planner?
Yes, I am.
All right, we'll accept your qualifications in those 2 areas.
Thank you. Okay, so I have 2 exhibits this evening. The first is an aerial of the project site, and we went ahead and overlaid that with the project plans. I know you have the site plans in front of you. And then the second exhibit is the construction plan. I'll wait till she comes. So we did have a professional meeting this week. We had it on Tuesday where we met with the planner, the arborist, and Laura Newman, the board engineer. We went over a lot of things. So coming out of that meeting, we went back to the site with the owner, and we've decided with the owner to replace all of the sidewalk, all of the pavement, all of the curbs, add landscaping along the front, around the sign. Really, the applicant has a desire to improve the site, so I'll go through the letter, but we're looking to comply with the recommendations of the board professionals. So we'll go through quickly, because I know you're going to have some questions on it. So the one item I think that you're going to want to hear about is the parking, because that was one item that, looking at the site, we were asked to, take a hard look at the parking because of the variance. Originally, there were overhead doors in the existing back of the property. The owner's not keeping those overhead doors, so if you look at that area right there, we're not showing parking spaces right now. I didn't want to change something that on the site plan that you have before you, but I'm telling you, we can fit 9 more spaces, 8 directly across, and then in that corner right there, another space. So we can gain 10 spaces on this site. And additionally, the other thing that we discussed is that your ordinance has a requirement for medical center, but not medical office. So the medical center is 1 space for every 150 square feet, so that's roughly 6 per 1,000. The board professionals recommended that we take a look at ITE. I brought copies of ITE for you that I can pass out if that's okay. And that is more for medical and dental office, that requirement, because a center is more like quick turnover in a medical center.
Let's just mark this first.
Okay. That's directly printed from ITE.
Yeah, so the A7, and this is from the current ITE manual?
Yes, it is.
Was that 10th edition?
And once this is passed out, you'll see that using ITE, the average is just over 3 spaces per 1,000 is the average. And so using that, we would still need a variance. We would still require 90 parking stalls on the site, but we believe we can make up, we're providing 80, we believe we can make up 9 and only need an offset of 1. Either way, we require a variance from your ordinance. But that said, we did take a hard look at the site to see if there was a way to mitigate the amount of parking required, because we knew after speaking with the board professionals that was going to be something you wanted to hear a lot about. We did on the site plan use the more conservative medical center, but it's not really, the applicant's not looking to put in a medical center. They're looking to put in medical, dental type offices, and that's only 6,150 square feet of it. The rest is professional office space. So I was going to go through.
Well, can we just stay on that for a moment?
Sure.
Because I want to, so with your most recent efforts, there's still a parking deficit, so there's still variance relief that's required.
Yes, definitely variance relief.
Part of your argument in favor of the variance relief is the nature of the medical uses that are going to be on site?
Yes.
So that's going to be, if there's an approval, that would be a condition that those are the types of medical uses that are going to be permitted?
Yes. It's,
And can you go over that again?
So basically, the applicant's looking more for medical office, the dental office type use, not a medical center. They're not looking.
So a doctor or dentist type use?
Type use.
And,
Or a therapist.
all right, is there like a global way for me to express that? A doctor's office? Doctor's or therapist's office?
I would just say medical office use.
Medical office,
As
okay.
opposed to a medical center.
And what would be a medical center that we're saying can't be there?
An emergiment or something?
Yeah, like an emerging.
Like an urgent care.
So if I say medical center, for example, urgent care.
Right. Because that has a lot more turnover, which is why your ordinance shows a higher parking requirement.
Urgent care or like a same-day surgery. Right. Okay, all right, I got it.
So I was going to go through the engineer's letter first, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. So a lot of the waivers that were requested are for existing conditions. It's an existing lot that already in the existing condition doesn't meet lot area or lot frontage, slightly under for lot frontage, but still in the existing condition, it does not meet that. Same with impervious surface. Although, if the board wanted us to reduce the impervious surface, we could probably look at that skinny drive area behind the building. We did leave that behind the building. It's there in the existing condition. But if there was a need to reduce the impervious surface, we could also explore that.
Could you zoom that for a second, please, the rear of the building?
It just provides access through the back.
So that's your lot line.
Yes.
So what's the width between the lot line and the rear of the building?
Give me 1 second. Let me scale it for you real quickly.
5.3 feet.
Okay.
Do you need to have that as an interconnection between the parking to the north of the building and the parking to the south?
We do not, because we can access the building through the front to go around the building. If you look at the site plan,
So would you have any major problems if we, since you're taking out all the pavement and curbs, to turn that into some type of grass area or sometimes like with a picnic table or something like that?
yep, we could do
where
it there. We
people-
could also add picnic tables over in this large grass area over on this side of the building. If you wanted to see that access across the back for any reason, we could also add seating in this area.
So, my personal opinion, I can't speak for my board, that I would like to see that rear area just grassed.
Okay.
All right? It's going to become a dump area if we leave it with the pavement. Board concur with that? Anybody have any objection? No? Seeing none? Everybody awake?
So can I just be a little bit more specific with that? So the rear area,
The extension of the rear portion, of the westerly extension of the building,
Hold on,
from the
the
back of the
westerly.
existing back of the building to the lot line, the pavement's going to be removed, and it's going to be turned into a grassed area, or a landscaped area.
And that would in effect eliminate, it is an existing condition which they were proposing to match, but there was a variance condition for impervious coverage. So by taking that out and converting to grass, it would eliminate that relief.
which relief?
Impervious coverage.
Which one is that?
D on page 3.
So they will now comply.
Along the frontage of the site, there is not sidewalk now. We did walk that area. It's not worn. I don't think people walk down there. There's no sidewalk on the abutting properties. It's along the state highway. So we were asking for the waiver for that.
So, I will tell you, the board is struggling with this issue right now. I don't know if there's sidewalk adjacent,
There's
on the
not.
adjacent properties.
Nothing.
But the problem is that we're having pedestrians walking in the shoulder. We're getting more and more of the pedestrian traffic. Again, I can't speak for the board, but we would like to see a sidewalk along the frontage.
Well, I personally, considering this is State Route 9, I would think a sidewalk would be in order.
I mean, I'm on Google Earth right now, and I don't see the next, it's just a sidewalk to nowhere.
Well, we know there's an application that's probably going to be coming in for the Army-Navy store.
Right, but then after that, I mean, you're going, it's a good distance from this property to the next sidewalk. I don't even know where it starts, to be honest with you.
Is there sidewalk along
No.
the bowling alley?
No.
Bowling alley's not even
to the bowling alley to this.
That's toward the north of it.
I mean, I'm already at least a mile down, there's nothing.
Yeah, the next closest building going south is like Chapter House and Long John Silver's.
Oh, wow.
It's like a mile of nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing.
All right, do we have the sidewalk ordinance yet?
So, Mr.
yeah,
Chairman, if I could,
contribution.
the one thing we could request of the applicant, I believe the ordinance changed after they had submitted their application, but the council did just introduce an ordinance to require contributions.
Yeah,
So
that's
if the
what I just-
applicant would be maybe willing to comply with our new ordinance on that, I think that would also get the township some funding to have sidewalk maybe in a more appropriate area.
Right. That's why I was just asking the deputy mayor. So.
Yes, we did.
We did?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
The town now has an ordinance that if you don't put in sidewalk, if we grant you that waiver, that you contribute to a sidewalk fund. Would the applicant be willing to comply with that?
Yes.
Okay. Then you can do without the sidewalk and just put the contribution.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other waivers then were the existing freestanding sign, which the architect already testified on. We're looking to keep the location and size of the sign, but of course it would be changed to depict the new uses, and it would be much more aesthetic. The parking we already spoke about, and Jay, we do intend to revise the plan and provide the curbing that's requested to eliminate that waiver.
All right, so which waiver is that?
Curbing along the perimeter of lots.
J. Okay, so we'll comply.
As for the aisle width, we were maintaining the existing aisle width to the north. It exceeds the 24 feet. We did run turning. We could provide turning templates to show that there's sufficient turning movement to maintain that. So that waiver we were requesting, we're over 24 feet, but I believe your ordinance requires a minimum of 25 feet. There is some portions of that are slightly under, just given the way that the building's oriented. We didn't want to cut into there's an existing buffer to the north that we'll talk about in a bit. We didn't want to start thinning that out, the existing trees in that area. We can supplement, but we didn't want to start pushing that pavement any further north than we currently are.
So you're talking about a deficiency of about, if my eyes are looking right, about a half a foot?
I think at its narrowest, it's 23.6 feet.
Oh, it is.
So it's roughly 1.4 feet. But again, the site has functioned with other offices. They're not proposing to change that condition.
Right. And we want to be impacting the existing buffer.
That is correct.
Yeah. So I would be inclined. Nick?
And I brought pictures of the buffer if you wanted to see it, so you could see the grass and, the trees and whatnot.
Anybody have an objection? No, we would be amenable to granting you that waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then the length of the off-street spaces, you require 19 feet in length. We are able to get 19 feet in some areas on the south side, but because of the north side with the buffer, we were asking for 18 feet, so the waiver for some of the spaces for that.
What about the new spaces that you're creating?
The new spaces on the south side, we can meet the 19 feet, and now that we're replacing all of the sidewalk, we might even be able to pull that side, now that the architect's going to be adding some deviation to the facade on that side, we might be able to pull out that sidewalk. If you look where it kind of jets in about 2 feet, we could even straighten that out to the south of the building, right there. We could probably now that we're replacing all of it, we could straighten that out and make it clean.
And Jacqueline, just to be clear, because I'm not sure if it's a typo, but this exhibit actually shows that you measured a 19-foot stall.
I believe it's 18 on the, no, that
On
is
the north?
19. You know what? I think we fixed that. Yes, we're able to get, I don't believe we need the waiver for that anymore.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, with that elimination and then the drive aisle, I really take no exception. Sometimes you have a concern if you have an 18 against a smaller, but in looking at this plan, it does look like they're able to hold a 19-foot long stall, which is consistent with our ordinance and would eliminate that relief.
And they'll wind up close to the 60-foot into.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So
We're
the
good.
the checklist waivers were granted for submission. We of course will comply with anything that the engineer or the planner or the certified tree expert requests.
I don't think there's anything additional on that. If you just want to hop over to maybe page 5, item 5, the discussion items.
Sure. So the discussion items, the overall operation of the site, tenants, I think we already talked about, hours of operation or business hours. Do you want me testifying to this, or you want the owner testifying? Are you okay with that? Yeah, so basically,
I think just basically what she had stated, that we plan on using it for
Council, we just
office.
need you to get close to the microphone.
That we plan on using it for office space, and those would be normal office uses.
Well, it's not, you said office space and medical office.
medical office as well.
Yeah.
So can we, just for discussion purposes, and the hours of operation would start 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning,
Is there
Probably
an
seven.
ordinance requirement?
7 o'clock?
Probably, I mean, for office, a lot of them provide, flex time between 7, I would
Right.
say probably 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Probably 7 to 7.
7 to 7, and that would be 5 days, 7 days a week?
Probably 5 days a week, but if people work overtime on the weekend, but yeah, 6 days is probably safe.
Okay. Okay.
And then if you wanted to hear trip generation, I could answer it that way.
I think this is a permitted use in the zone. Maybe you could just talk to loading, the type of loading vehicles that you anticipate coming on the site?
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate anything bigger than a box truck for FedEx and those type of deliveries. Certainly nothing bigger than an SU-50.
So where is a vehicle going to park when it comes on the site?
Those, I believe the applicant would accept the condition that if it was any type of, it would probably be off-peak. Because if we eliminate that area in the back, what I could leave is a little section behind the building. I could eliminate most of that and make it grass. If you go to the south, I could leave that area right there as a loading zone and provide sidewalk to it so they could take a wheel cart and wheel it in if they needed to.
Where's the loading zone going to be?
I could leave that area right there and create a loading zone on the property.
In the resolution, though, I need to be,
Okay, in the southwest corner of the site, we would provide a loading zone to the satisfaction of the board engineer.
okay.
And Jacqueline, you'd be willing to provide a turning template which demonstrates that a garbage truck can get onto the site, unload, and then turn around and get out?
Yes, and I believe for turning around, I spoke to the owner about, so we wanted to tuck the garbage in the back so that it wasn't unsightly. However, that's a long way to back out. So he's going to schedule any type of refuse pickup on off hours so that the lot isn't full, so that the truck can turn around.
Well, when you talk about off hours, all right, can we say that it's going to be scheduled before 7 o'clock in the morning?
Yes, before 7 or before or after 7. Before 7 in the morning or after.
I don't think before 7 in the morning is going to comply with our noise ordinance. And then we'd have dumpsters getting
Okay.
banged around.
So then we could also modify maybe the start hours. Yeah, so we could do an 8 o'clock start so that any type of refuse could be around 7 in the morning. Okay.
Okay, that's acceptable.
And then along the northern end of the, so if we go to the aerial, I'm going to show you the location of the residential property. Oh, did it get, can you zoom? Is it zoomed in right now? Oh, you can't even see it.
I'm sorry, my processing, I'm real tired right now, all right? Going back to the trucks.
Sure.
All right? UPS truck, a FedEx truck, all right? A WB Mason truck, those are all the single units, all right? And those probably would fit no problem in that loading zone, all right? we're not going to get a WB50 on this site.
No.
All right, so would the applicant agree to that no vehicle is greater than a single unit
Yes.
vehicle?
Yes. And so if you look at this aerial, you can see in this upper corner, that's the residential site. I brought photos that I can pass out to show you. I stood at the residential site and took pictures towards the property. There's a heavy wooded buffer between the properties, and because it's so far back, it's actually as far back beyond the property that you can't actually visually see the parking lot or office use from that location. It's pretty heavily wooded.
And
So it's
just if I could, Mr. Chairman, because we kind of, I don't know whether we skipped over it or we didn't talk about it, but that's part of the existing condition relief associated with this application. 50-foot buffer would be required along this property line because it does adjoin a residential use. In the existing condition, we see how it currently sits. I would note that they're not looking to infringe upon that, and then I would turn back over to Jacqueline to complete her testimony as to what it visually looks like.
So I brought the photos so you can see what it looks like, but we're not changing it from the existing condition.
Okay, let's just hold on till the photos are distributed.
And then C is the adequacy of access pavement areas. We're going to replace the pavement areas. We're going to replace the striping. The lighting, there was a comment in the front that it didn't quite meet the ordinance. We're going to revise that. We agree to comply with meeting the lighting to the satisfaction of the board professionals.
And the lighting's going to be the pole mounted,
Yes.
okay? Dark sky compliant,
Yes.
okay? LED,
Yes, it is. Yes, it is LED.
white light,
Yes. And then for existing and proposed stormwater management, we're actually, we were already reducing the impervious slightly before. With eliminating that area in the back, we're going to be further reducing the impervious surface, so no changes to the direction of runoff are proposed. We already answered the overhead door. We removed, it's not going to be proposed.
I'm sorry. The existing stormwater management, what is it?
Right now, the site has one inlet in the upper northeast corner of the site. It's right there. And that inlet drains into that swale that's up to right along the property line. And then that goes back, and I think that, because we walked it, it possibly goes into that drainage basin behind it, but it looks like more likely that that swale continues to the back of the property. And if you go way back behind that residential property, we walked back there, and it's kind of, there's a stream, if you go way, like not a defined stream, but I believe that that swale just keeps going behind the property. It's, that's how the site drains now.
And that swale is off-site of your property, correct?
It's off-site, so we're reducing the amount of impervious to it. So we weren't proposing to change anything with the stormwater, but to the satisfaction of the board engineer, we would.
Well, and then just to clarify, this isn't a major development, so it doesn't prompt the stormwater management regulations. And because they are reducing the impervious flow, by essence of doing that, they are reducing the flow rates from the site. So I believe they have done all that is required, given the scope of their application.
Okay, and you can get the drainage from the southwest corner of the site to that one catch basin?
Right now, that's how it drains now.
And I mean, I look at the architect's pictures that he handed out before, all right? And I can see there's some pondings that are going on.
Yeah. I believe in the existing condition, there are some common drains that might be on the neighboring property to the south as well, but if we needed to drop any inlets or anything, I would review it with the board engineer, but I will try to get everything out with surface flow through grading.
Okay.
The overhead door, that's been eliminated.
And I think you also addressed refuse on the site identification sign. As it relates to your utility services to the building, are you going to maintain existing services?
Yes, there's this existing electric coming in on the north side, there's an existing septic system, and existing gas line is actually adequate. So
And what about water?
I think we're well water right now. I don't,
And you will, if need be, get a letter from the Board of Health that both the well and septic are adequate for your building addition?
yes, we agreed to have the expert come look at it and certify the system, yes.
And then as it relates to our ordinance standards of performance, just noise, glare, pollutants, waste, flammable, you would agree to comply with that section of the code?
Yes, we would.
And you are along Route 9, however, does your application increase the number of trips at your access point
So I...
by more than 100?
No, it does not by more than 100. I can give you the exact numbers. AM change and peak hour trips was an increase of 7 per hour, and PM was an increase of 8. And I can walk you through all the backup data to that if you'd like.
I don't know that we need the backup data, Mr. Chairman, because unless there's an increase of over 100 trips, it would not prompt a DOT action. So then moving forward, we have some technical comments in item 6. You agree to comply with those?
Yes, we do.
Mr. Chairman, I think that takes them through the report.
Okay, that's the engineer's letter. Wasn't there a planning letter?
Yes, there is. Let me go through that. And I can either go through the whole letter, or if there's specific things you
Well,
want...
I think, Peter, is there anything specifically that we should be focusing on?
I mean, I think there was a lot of, overlap between in terms of the variances. A lot of them were in the engineering letter and were addressed already. One question I did have, though, was about the rear yard setback as it relates to the roof height. The standard is that it's got to be a minimum of 25 feet or the height of the roof. I know at the rear of the building, the roof is, I believe, 22.67 feet.
Yes, it is.
However, on the front end of the building, which is obviously quite far from the rear yard in terms of proximity, but yet it's still the building, what's the flat roof height in the front of the building?
So it's close to 35 feet at the front. So because your ordinance doesn't differentiate what height where, it's just highest at the very front. At the back, it's existing. At the front, it's higher where it's appropriate. So technically, it might be a variance.
Yeah, and just to clarify there, well under the permitted height, which is 45 feet, so they're at 35 feet near the front of the building.
Correct.
All the way at the other end of the building, near the rear of the building and the rear yard, they're at 22.67 feet. The rear yard setback's 25.3 feet. So at the rear of the building, the 22.67, it's less than their setback. They're compliant. But because the front of the building is higher, technically they need a variance for rear yard setback. So I just wanted to hope that clarifies.
Yes, that is true.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you want me to go through in the letter, or do you want me to go through the whole letter?
I think, I think everything else has been covered either through testimony or through going through the engineering letter, so nothing further for me.
Okay, is that her testimony?
Yes.
Questions from the board? Seeing none? Open it up to the public? Closing it? Okay, council, any summation?
No summation.
Okay. What's the board's disposition?
Chairman, this is a substantial improvement to this area. I know this building well because I used the chiropractor there when she was there. The water leaks in that building were amazing. So if no other comments, I'm going to make the motion to approve SP 1055, 1228 Realty.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Dorado?
Yes.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Chairman Nash?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
See, we did approve 2 applications tonight.
But they both made buildings look better.
Master plan status report, we're going to defer the presentation for the housing element to the July 18th meeting.
That's correct.
There's really no other thing to report on the master plan right now.
Are we having a meeting in June? The master plan subcommittee?
You want to have a meeting?
I think my recommendation would be, as a master plan subcommittee, to have the advanced look at the master plan amendment prior to our public hearing.
Okay, then we're having a meeting. All right. But the meeting will be after the next our next regular board meeting.
Okay, so we're not going to have it separate? Okay.
Well, no, it'll be a separate meeting, but it'll be a week later.
Right.
Yeah, on the 27th. Okay. Any reason to go into executive?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. We're done. Good night.
A reminder, I'm not here on the 20th. I had told you this, but I'm just reminding you. I'll remind...